Hey everybody, Jeffrey Bartel here, and I'm gonna be reacting to the first interview of Harris and Walz. Now I know what you're probably gonna say. This is a few days old, but I got a reason for that. On the last day, on the last day of the DNC, I got a copyright strike, uh, so I wasn't able to do this live. So this is just gonna be this is like a pre-record, pre-live thing. Just sometimes just doesn't seem fair if you ask me. I mean, for you two to do stuff. For you two to do this just doesn't seem fair, does it? After all, how can you do? How can you do the? How can you do anything if you're, you know, ri risk of losing everything on your YouTube channel? But anyway, right now the official stream is gonna start at 4 o'clock precisely, p.m. Pacific time precisely. And right now I'm finishing up some last minute stuff before we get started. So hopefully by the time it's 7 p.m. Pacific time, or a little after, the live stream will be over. To make sure to make sure and to make sure no copyright strikes, none at all. I'm gonna either go to this the full screen on the webcam, or just fast forward to the commercials. Depending on it just all depends. It's like a roll of the dice. You just never know what's gonna. You just never know what's gonna happen. Uh, do you find it out? Well, tell me. Do you find it not fair? Do you find it not fair that all you worked on the multiple channels that you worked on that was suddenly removed? Almost all of them. Let me know in the comment section, or the live chat. Like I said, I'm finishing some last minute detail. Like I said, I'm finishing some last minute stuff before I get started on the live stream. The video officially starts at 4 o'clock. So just 9 minutes, just almost 8 minutes away. So hang in there, people. It doesn't seem fair that a project you worked so hard on just immediately gets removed. Do you? That's why. That's why I can't believe I'm saying this. Filing a lawsuit against you, YouTube, and probably Google too. Can't believe I'm saying that. What a what a choice do I have to fix this? Do you have it? If you got a better idea, I'm all ears. Man, this is just taking trying to get this sentence just removed. There we go. Second one right there. Oops. There. Okay. Just almost there. Let's switch screens. There we go. Can you still hear me? Good. Good. Getting close to at the 4 o'clock precisely. It starts. And tell me this: is Fiverr a good place to make money? Fiverr, Fiverr. Let me know, okay? Just want to finish. Just need to send this email. Just need to send this email off, and I'll be good, ready to go. Oh man. So I might be a little late, but don't worry. Nothing goes according. Nothing goes according to plan. Am I right? I'll have to look at that later. Look at that email later. Oh, come on. Let's see if I have better luck now. And there we go. Now then. There we go. All set. Because tomorrow, I'm not. Oh, and for the record, if I get a warning, I'll got to stop. Probably have to stop the live stream because I'm not risking. I'm not risking a second. I'm not risking a second strike. Not during. Not during the elect. Not when tomorrow is the debate. The debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. I sometimes just wish that YouTube would just get off my back. Okay, here we go. Already now. Time to start this meeting. Time to start this live stream, I mean.
Tonight from Battleground, Georgia, a watershed moment in the 2024 campaign, and you will see it only here on CNN. Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris and vice presidential nominee Tim Walz.
Hello. Hi. Hi. How are you?
Tonight, the new Democratic ticket in their first interview.
Hi, crew.
In the final sprint to Election Day,
1, 2, 3.
their top priorities for the country,
What would you do on day one in the White House?
the tough questions on their records,
The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already? What do you say to voters who aren't sure whether they can take you at your word?
taking on Donald Trump,
People might be surprised to hear that you have never interacted with him, met him face to face.
that fateful phone call from Joe Biden,
I'll give you a little too much information.
and their take on those viral convention images.
It's very humbling. It's very humbling in many ways.
I don't know as a father I could have ever imagined that.
With just days until early voting begins, a defining moment in the race for the White House. CNN's exclusive interview of the Democratic nominees starts now.
Oh, here we go.
Good evening. We're live from Savannah, Georgia. I'm Dana Bash, and this is a state very much up for grabs. In between a whirlwind series of stops, I sat down with the Democratic candidate for president and her running mate today at Kim's Cafe here in Savannah. Inside, nothing was off the table, and you will see our interview in its entirety. The vice president's first as her party's standard bearer, responding to her critics and answering our questions.
Welcome on board.
Thank you. It's good to see you. This is not where Vice President Harris thought she would be.
We're going to Georgia. Yes. 7th trip there this year for me.
A surprise nominee for president just months from Election Day. Set in motion after a stunning debate.
Look, if we finally beat Medicare,
Some within your own party are wondering if President Biden should even step aside. What do you say to that?
There was a slow start, but it was a strong finish.
And then an extraordinary decision.
I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation.
Philadelphia!
What usually takes years of planning, coming together in a matter of weeks.
Tim Walz!
After a historic nomination at the convention in Chicago,
On behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth. I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
The Harris-Walz ticket is now pushing forward with the shortest presidential campaign in modern history.
What did you hear from voters here?
People are very optimistic.
We joined them on the trail as they visited the battleground of Georgia. Just 68 days from the election. Madam Vice President, Governor Walz, thank you so much for sitting down with me and bringing the bus. The bus tour is well underway here in Georgia. You have less time to make your case to voters than any candidate in modern American history. The voters are really eager to hear what your plans are. If you are elected, what would you do on day one in the White House?
Well, there are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward, in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism. I think, sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation, and I think people are ready to turn the page on that.
So what would you do day one?
Day one, it's going to be about, one, implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity economy. I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard, which include what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods, what we're going to do to invest in America's small businesses, what we're going to do to invest in families, for example, extending the child tax credit to $6,000 for families for the first year of their child's life, to help them buy a car seat, to help them buy baby clothes, a crib. There's the work that we're going to do that is about investing in the American family around affordable housing, a big issue in our country right now. So there are a number of things on day one.
What about you?
Well, I'm excited about this agenda, too. As I said, the idea of inspiring America to what can be. And I think many of these things that the Vice President's proposing are things that we share in values. And the child tax credit is one we know that reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We did it in Minnesota to have a federal partner in this. Unbelievable, I think, in the impact that we can make.
You talked about, you call it the opportunity economy. You are well aware that right now many Americans are struggling. There's a crisis of affordability.
I'm one of them.
One of your campaign themes is we're not going back. But I wonder what you say to voters who do want to go back when it comes to the economy specifically, because their groceries were less expensive, housing was more affordable when Donald Trump was president.
I agree with that.
Well, let's start with the fact that when Joe Biden and I came in office, during the height of a pandemic, we saw over 10 million jobs were lost. People, I mean, literally, we were all tracking the numbers. Hundreds of people a day were dying because of COVID. The economy had crashed. In large part, all of that because of mismanagement by Donald Trump of that crisis. When we came in, our highest priority was to do what we could to rescue America. And today, we know that we have inflation at under 3%. A lot of our policies have led to the reality that America recovered faster than any wealthy nation around the world. But you are right. Prices, in particular for groceries, are still too high. The American people know it, I know it. Which is why my agenda includes what we need to do to bring down the price of groceries. For example, dealing with an issue like price gouging. What we need to do to extend the child tax credit to help young families be able to take care of their children in their most formative years. What we need to do to bring down the cost of housing My proposal includes what would be a tax credit of $25,000 for first-time home buyers, so they can just have enough to put a down payment on a home, which is part of the American dream and their aspiration, but do it in a way that allows them to actually get on the path to achieving that goal and that dream.
So you have been vice president for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Never happened. We did it. So now, as I travel in the state of Georgia and around our country, the number of seniors that have benefited. I was in Nevada recently, a grandmother who showed me her receipts. And before we capped the cost of insulin for seniors at $35 a month, she was paying hundreds of dollars, up to thousands of dollars a month for her insulin. She's not doing that any longer.
You maintain Bidenomics is a success.
I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first year of being in office to extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%, when we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America, what we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work. There's more to do, but that's good work.
I want to get some clarity on where you stand on some key policy issues. Energy is a big one. When you were in Congress, you supported the Green New Deal. And in 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
In 2019, I believe, at a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
What made you change that position at the time?
Well, let's be clear. My values have not changed. I believe it is very important that we take seriously what we must do to guard against what is a clear crisis in terms of the climate. And to do that, we can do what we have accomplished thus far. The Inflation Reduction Act, what we have done to invest, by my calculation, over probably $1 trillion over the next 10 years, investing in a clean energy economy. What we've already done, creating over 300,000 new clean energy jobs. That tells me, from my experience as vice president, we can do it without banning fracking. In fact, Dana, I cast the tie-breaking vote that actually increased leases for fracking as vice president. So I'm very clear about where I stand.
And was there some policy or scientific data that you saw that you said, oh, okay, I get it now?
What I have seen is that we can grow and we can increase a thriving clean energy economy without banning fracking.
Okay. Another issue, big one, is immigration. As vice president, you were tasked with addressing the root causes of migration in southern countries and
northern part of Central America.
The northern part of Central America that affects the southern border of the U.S. During the Biden-Harris administration, there were record numbers of illegal border crossings. Why did the Biden-Harris administration wait 3.5 years to implement sweeping asylum restrictions?
Well, first of all, the root causes work that I did as vice president, that I was asked to do by the president, has actually resulted in a number of benefits, including historic investments by American businesses in that region. The number of immigrants coming from that region has actually reduced since we began that work. But I will say this, that Joe Biden and I and our administration worked with members of the United States Congress on an immigration issue that is very significant to the American people and to our security, which is the border. And through bipartisan work, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, a bill was crafted, which we supported, which I support. And Donald Trump got word of this bill that would have contributed to securing our border, and because he believes that it would not have helped him politically, he told his folks in Congress, don't put it forward. He killed the bill. A border security bill that would have put 1,500 more agents on the border. And let me tell you something, the Border Patrol endorsed the bill. And I'm sure in large part because they knew they were working around the clock, and 1,500 more agents would help them. That bill would have allowed us to increase seizures of fentanyl. Ask any community in America that has been devastated by fentanyl what passing that bill would have done to address their concern and a pain that they've experienced.
So you would push that legislation again. I just want to ask
Not only push it, I will make sure that it comes to my desk and I would sign it.
Just one other question about something that you
that's
said in
Donald Trump did was
2019 when
considered
you
a
first
crime.
ran. There was a debate. You raised your hand when asked whether or not the border should be decriminalized. Do you still believe that?
I believe there should be consequence. We have laws that have to be followed and enforced that address and deal with people who cross our border illegally, and there should be consequence. And let's be clear, in this race, I'm the only person who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations who traffic in guns, drugs, and human beings. I'm the only person in this race who actually served a border state as Attorney General to enforce our laws, and I would enforce our laws as president going forward. I recognize the problem.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dan,
Just a heads up. Sorry, I paused it right there. But just a heads up. There's always a reason why someone is crossing illegally. They should find. From my perspective, I believe we should find out what that reason is and determine what to do afterwards. For example, if they had no money to get, for example, if they were hunted down and if they're being hunted down in the, if they stayed in a state that they know that they were going to be killed at, we can't send them back, can we? No, I don't think. In my personal view, no, we shouldn't. But if we can't take any more people into the country, then we shouldn't send them back either. We should probably just send them to another country that can take them. That's my belief. Life is not expendable. But that was just an example. So let's continue.
I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and by extension the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California, prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed. So that is the reality of it. In 4 years of being vice president, I'll tell you, one of the aspects to your point is traveling the country extensively. I mean, I'm here in Georgia. I think somebody told me 17 times since I've been vice president in Georgia alone. I believe it is important to build consensus, and it is important to find a common place of understanding of where we can actually solve problems.
On that note, you had a lot of Republican speakers at the convention. Will you appoint a Republican to your cabinet?
Yes, I would.
Anyone in mind?
I would. No one in particular in mind. We got 68 days to go with this election, so I'm not putting the cart before the horse. But I would.
I would do.
I think it's really important. I have spent my career inviting
I would do Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Diversity of opinion. I think it's important to have people at the table when some of the most important decisions are being made that have different views, different experiences. And I think it would be to the benefit of the American public to have a member of my cabinet who was a Republican.
That was just the start of our wide-ranging conversation, and we have some never-before-shared details about the phone call that changed everything between President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris.
I'm just curious, staying on President Biden, when he called you and said he was pulling out of the race, what was that like? And did he offer to endorse you right away, or did you ask for it?
It was a Sunday, so here, I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
And her running mate. I asked him about some of the controversies that have sprung up since Harris put him on the ticket.
Governor Walz, the country is just starting to get to know you. I want to ask you a question about how you've described your service in the National Guard. You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
This election season, stay with CNN, with more reporters on the ground and the best political team in the business. Follow the voters, follow the results, follow the facts. Follow CNN.
No, I wish I could be like a. No, I wish CNN would have put me on their allow list or something like that, or the other way around. I don't know how the allow list works.
Get your first set for $19 when you sign up to be a new VIP at Fabletics.com.
Welcome back live from Savannah, Georgia, and our exclusive interview with Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. In just 12 days, Harris will meet Donald Trump on a debate stage in Philadelphia. And when I say meet, I mean literally meet. Would you believe they have never talked face to face? The only time they've even been in the same room was when Harris was a senator watching Trump's State of the Union address. Now it's Trump watching Harris on the campaign trail with money and momentum behind her and making her case directly to voters.
As voters are getting to know Kamala Harris, they want answers on how she will make their lives better. She heard that here at Sandfly Barbecue in Savannah.
What we're going to do to increase access to capital for small businesses, I'll be rolling out next week. Part of what we're going to be doing in terms of a tax credit.
On the trail, she talks about her experience, years in the courtroom as a district attorney and eventually California's attorney general. She wants to reframe the contest as the prosecutor versus the felon.
I know Donald Trump's type. I've been dealing with them my whole career.
The former president is turning to a well-defined playbook of personal attacks.
I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black.
And in just
now, those kind of stuff should be forbidden. Now, those kind of stuff should be probably forbidden. You should be focusing on yourself more than attacking your opponent. That is a clean race in the political election. Trump is just doing a dirty war, and I hate dirty wars.
12 days, the nominees will meet face-to-face for the first time.
She's not a good debater. She's not a smart person. She doesn't want to debate.
If you've got something to say, say it to my face.
I want to ask you about your opponent, Donald Trump.
Okay.
I was a little bit surprised. People might be surprised to hear that you have never interacted with him, met him face to face. That's going to change soon. But what I want to ask you about is what he said last month. He suggested that you happened to turn black recently for political purposes, questioning a core part of your identity.
Yeah.
I think that's racist.
Same old tired playbook. Next question, please.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Let's talk about some foreign policy issues that would be on your plate if you become commander-in-chief. President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I am unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. But let's take a step back. October 7, 1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were simply attending a music festival. Women were horribly raped. As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And we have got to get a deal done. We were in Doha. We have to get a deal done. This war must end.
In the meantime,
and we must get a deal that is about getting the hostages out. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at the significance of this to the families, to the people who are living in that region, a deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war, but will unlock so much of what must happen next. I remain committed since I've been on October 8 to what we must do to work toward a two-state solution, where Israel is secure and in equal measure, the Palestinians have security and self-determination and dignity.
Governor Walz.
Well, let me just say something right here. As you know, I don't know. Firstly, I don't know if Benjamin Netanyahu will even want to sit down. If that's the case, you should, Kamala, if you're listening to this, you should have a plan. You should have a plan in case that happens. Like put pressure on him so he could actually come to the table. You know what I mean? Like with something that. Like withhold something that Israel needs that comes from America, like FDR did with Japan, but that resulted in the U.S. entering World War II. So just hope you make the right call. Just hope you make the right calls. And but my plan for the future of Israel and Palestine is for the two countries to eventually be reunified without shedding a single drop of blood. My plan is called the Holy Land Reunification. You could learn more about it through Facebook. I would even give you the link, but how do I put this? I've been locked out of Facebook since March 21st, 2024, and I can't get back in no matter what piece of ID I give them. That's why I'm gonna have to take Facebook to court to get this resolved. Anyway, let's see what Tim Walz has to say about this.
The country is just starting to get to know you. I want to ask you a question about how you've described your service in the National Guard. You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is. And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the idea that you said that you were in war, did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog. I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have, and I never will.
I just one other
Same
question,
here.
because again, this is all
Even if
new.
they were in a war that we should never have been involved
This was
in.
not, however many days ago, this was not on either of your bingo cards, especially yours. You had to clarify that you had said that you and your wife used IVF, but it turned out you used a different kind of fertility in order to have children. And then when you ran for Congress in 2006, your campaign repeatedly made false statements about a 1995 arrest for drunk and reckless driving. What do you say to voters who aren't sure whether they can take you at your word?
Well, I've been very public. I think they can see my students come out, former folks I've served with, and they vouch for me. I certainly own my mistakes when I make them. The one thing I'll tell you is I wished in this country wouldn't have to do this. I spoke about our infertility issues because it's hell, and families know this. And I spoke about the treatments that were available to us that had those beautiful children there. That's quite a contrast in folks that are trying to take those rights away from us. And so I think people know who I am. They know that record. They've seen that. I've taught thousands of students. I've been out there. And I won't apologize for speaking passionately, whether it's guns in schools or protecting of reproductive rights. The contrast could not be clearer between what we're running against. The Vice President's position on this has been clear. And I think most Americans get it if you've been through that. I don't think they're cutting hairs on IVF or IUI. I think what they're cutting hairs on is an abortion ban and the ability to be able to deny families the chance to have a beautiful child.
Up next, the moment that changed everything when Kamala Harris got a phone call from President Biden that he was dropping out of the race.
It was a Sunday, so here I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
My family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces.
Speaking of those baby nieces, the vice president also opens up about a viral picture from the convention that meant so much to so many. And Tim Walz talks about that convention moment with his son that brought many viewers to tears.
You were speaking, the camera caught him, so incredibly proud of you, so emotional, saying, "That's my dad."
Yeah, I don't know as a father I could have ever imagined that.
Have I Got News for You? Premieres Saturday, September 14th at 9 on CNN.
When I grow up, I want to be an actor.
I hope you were watching that, Donald Trump, because we all make mistakes. But it's know-it-alls who tend to make more mistakes than others. So yeah, and I'm talking to you, Trump. Mr. Know-it-all.
Promo gear for gifting
I won't
at
apologize
4imprint.
for admitting to being
Exclusive
wrong.
items and quality brands to wow your clients, your customers, and your team. Delivered on time. Go to 4imprint.com and find some wow now.
4imprint for certain.
Your friends are turning 30.
My God, why?
And TBS is hosting the Ultimate Friends Celebration. Yes, and stream every episode on Max.
Here we go.
Welcome back, live from Savannah, Georgia, and our exclusive interview with the Democratic presidential and vice presidential nominees, Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. It's hard to believe it was just 39 days ago President Biden shocked the world via tweet. That's how we found out he was dropping his reelection bid. But before he tweeted the news, Biden called his vice president. And for the first time, we are hearing about that phone call and exactly what Kamala Harris was doing when she answered. But we started this discussion with the moment that set all of this in motion, CNN's presidential debate, and whether President Biden was strong enough to lead this nation again.
Vice President Harris, you were a very staunch defender of President Biden's capacity to serve another 4 years. Right after the debate, you insisted that President Biden is extraordinarily strong. Given where we are now, do you have any regrets about what you told the American people?
No, not at all. Not at all. I have served with President Biden for almost 4 years now, and I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest honors of my career, truly. He cares so deeply about the American people. He is so smart and loyal to the American people. And I have spent hours upon hours with him, be it in the Oval Office or the Situation Room. He has the intelligence, the commitment, and the judgment and disposition that I think the American people rightly deserve in their president. By contrast, the former president has none of that. And so, one, I am so proud to have served as vice president to Joe Biden. And two, I am so proud to be running with Tim Walz for president of the United States and to bring America what I believe the American people deserve, which is a new way forward, and turn the page on the last decade of what I believe has been contrary to where the spirit of our country really lies.
But the last decade, of course, the last 3.5 years has been part of your administration.
I'm talking about an era that started about a decade ago, where there is some suggestion, warped I believe it to be, that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, instead of where I believe most Americans are, which is to believe that the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. That's what's at stake as much as any other detail that we could discuss in this election.
Because we haven't had a chance to talk, I'm just curious, staying on President Biden, when he called you and said he was pulling out of the race, what was that like? And did he offer to endorse you right away, or did you ask for it?
It was a Sunday, so here, I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
My family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces, and we had just had pancakes and, you know, Auntie, can I have more bacon? Yes, I'll make you more bacon. And then we were sitting down to do a puzzle. And the phone rang, and it was Joe Biden. And he told me what he had decided to do. And I asked him, "Are you sure?" And he said yes. And that's how I learned about it.
And what about the endorsement? Did you ask for it?
He was very clear that he was going to support me.
So when he called to tell you, he said, "I'm pulling out of the race and I'm going to support you."
Well, my first thought was not about me, to be honest with you. My first thought was about him, to be honest. I think history is going to show a number of things about Joe Biden's presidency. I think history is going to show that in so many ways it was transformative, be it on what we have accomplished around finally investing in America's infrastructure, investing in new economies, in new industries, what we have done to bring our allies back together and have confidence in who we are as America and grow that alliance. what we have done to stand true to our principles, including one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I think history is going to show not only has Joe Biden led an administration that has achieved those extraordinary successes, but the character of the man is one that he has been in his life and career, including as a president, quite selfless and puts the American people first.
A passionate defense of the man who chose her to be his running mate 4 years ago. 4 years later, Harris made a choice of her own. And with Governor Walz's rise to national prominence, a star was born at the convention, Gus Walz. We'll hear about that moment between father and son and the woman who could make history in the Oval Office on this iconic photo.
Madam Vice President, the photograph that has gone viral. You were speaking, one of your grandnieces that you were just talking about was watching you accept the nomination. You didn't explicitly talk about gender or race in your speech, but it obviously means a lot to a lot of people, and that viral picture really says it. What does it mean to you?
The TV moments that took culture over the edge. People were watching, and then our world changed.
Boom! It had an explosive reverberation.
TV on the Edge premieres Sunday, September 22nd at 9 on CNN.
You love.
Pretty interesting about that. I'd just be shocked. I'd probably be shocked by it. Personally.
When you sign up to be a new VIP at Fabletics.com.
Personally, I think Bernie would probably been a better president than Biden. But that's my thoughts.
Matter.
Because Bernie is like it's like me in almost every way, my ideals and all that. But he'd probably be a one-term president too, but it's probably to get the job done.
We're back live from Savannah, Georgia, and our CNN exclusive interview with Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate, who was supposed to be, if you listened to some experts, a big name, a prominent leader from a swing state, Pennsylvania or Arizona. But it is a little-known guy outside of his home state, where Minnesota nice is a source of pride. But behind all of that folksy humor and flannel, Tim Walz is far from just being Mr. Nice Guy when it comes to needling Donald Trump.
Governor, you obviously have spoken to voters all over your state for years.
Yeah.
What are you learning in a place like Georgia?
We're seeing explosion in small business growth. The one thing is workforce and child care, because workers have to have child care.
Campaigning with Tim Walz.
Don't do it.
Finding his role in this historic campaign.
Would you be my running mate and let's get this thing on the road?
I would be honored, Madam Vice President.
After bursting onto the national stage with this word.
These guys are just weird.
Known as a folksy father of two from rural America, now a running mate who is not holding back.
Listen to the guy. He's talking about Hannibal Lecter and shocking sharks and just whatever crazy thing pops into his mind.
And finding his own rhythm with his new boss.
What'd you order? Brisket and greens and mac and cheese.
What about you?
I had the brisket and coleslaw on this.
And what about the spice situation, the Tabasco? What's happening with that?
I'm going to let him speak for himself.
The Vice President's growing peppers at her residence, so she's trying to bring me along on this. You know, Minnesotans.
It's okay.
I'm getting there.
It's all good. You just do you.
I just have to ask you both about two standout moments, aside, of course, from the addresses that you both gave, but standout moments that were perhaps unexpected during the convention. You mentioned one of them, Governor. A moment that you shared, that the world shared with your son, Gus. You were speaking, the camera caught him, so incredibly proud of you, so emotional, saying, "That's my dad."
Yeah, I don't know as a father I could have ever imagined that. I'm grateful for so many reasons to be on this ticket, but that moment, to understand what was really important, to have my son feel a sense of pride in me, that I was trying to do the right thing. And it was, you try and protect your kids, it brings notoriety and things, but it was just such a visceral, emotional moment that I'm grateful I got to experience it, and I'm so proud of him. I'm proud of him. I'm proud of Hope. I'm proud of Gwen. She's a wonderful mother, and these are great kids. And I think the one thing is, talking about the era we're in, is our politics can be better. It can be different. We can show some of these things, and we can have families involved in this. And I hope that I hope people felt that out there, and I hope they hug their kids a little tighter, because you just never know, and life can be kind of hard.
And last question, Madam Vice President, the photograph that has gone viral. You were speaking, one of your grandnieces that you were just talking about was watching you accept the nomination. You didn't explicitly talk about gender or race in your speech, but it obviously means a lot to a lot of people, and that viral picture really says it. What does it mean to you?
I am running because I believe that I am the best person to do this job at this moment. For all Americans, regardless of race and gender. But I did see that photograph, and I was deeply touched by it. And you're right, it's the back of her head, her two little braids, and then I'm in the front of the photograph, obviously speaking. And it's very humbling. It's very humbling in many ways.
Did she talk to you about it afterwards?
Oh, she had a lot to talk about. She had a lot. She listened to everything, and she listens to everything.
Give you your hot takes?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Madam Vice President, Governor Walz, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana. Thank you.
This was Vice President Harris's first real unscripted setting where voters could see and hear her explain some of her policy positions now and how they differ from before she became vice president, and why. And this was the first we heard those details about an extraordinary phone call from a president dropping out of the race and endorsing his vice president, something that will certainly go down in history. CNN has also invited both President Trump and Senator J.D. Vance to sit down with us. We hope to bring that interview to you as well. We have plenty of CNN special coverage ahead. I want to go to my friend and colleague, Abby Phillip, who is standing by with some of the
I'd rather watch
political
paint
minds
dry
in the
than
business.
listen
Abby?
to that.
We have them all here,
Listen to
Dana.
those
You've given us a lot to chew on. Our hats off to you. Thank you very much. Stick around, though. We will make sure to come back to you throughout the next hour. I want to get in the room here to get some initial reactions with our great panel. David Axelrod, let's start with you. What did you make of how Vice President Harris did she meet the moment?
Yeah, I think she did what she needed to do. What she needed to do was be the same person that people have seen on the stage for the last month and have seen a new sense of sort of confidence, of calm and comfortable comfort that we haven't seen before from her. We didn't see certainly the last time she ran. She was very connected to her word. She seemed strong. She seemed competent. She seemed like someone who could be president of the United States. That was the first test. One thing, because I know we got a lot of opinions here.
We have time for yours, don't worry.
But, I think well, two things then. I think that she handled the issue of her changes or perceived changes in policy pretty well. I mean, I think the idea that her values have been the same and have been consistent was a good bridge there. One thing that I want to note is we were asking the question earlier, how will she handle the president, and will she separate herself from the president? And there might be some political logic to doing that. She's talking about turning the page. Does she want to be a continuation? That's what the Republicans will want to make her out to be. I'll give Scott the opportunity to do it in a second. But as she spoke, I thought it showed a certain character, the way she talked about Joe Biden. She didn't run away from him. She gave him, I think, his due. She understands that there's some political risk to that. That actually was elevating to me in a way that I hadn't expected. So I think on the whole, this was a good night. It wasn't a huge, I don't think she moved the ball that much forward, but she certainly didn't fall back.
The do no harm principle of politicking here.
Yeah,
Audie?
I mean, interviews, they can be combat, they can be a conversation. And what she needed to do was communicate. And so often in the past, she comes to an interview in a way prepared to be the interrogator. And people already know she's good at asking sharp, tough questions of people who she feels deserve scrutiny. It's her being under that scrutiny that has been where the stakes have been higher. And I think today it did show that she has the ability to sit down and have that back and forth that Republicans are talking about. Can she really do it? So how many more times? I don't know how much that matters. And I do get a little nervous that in the media we're preoccupied with, like, how much access, how many conversations is she going to have in the settings we deem most valuable to voters, when this is a campaign that is actually making a mark in an interesting way, reaching out to people directly.
But Asad, you have also spent a couple of times now interviewing her. What did you make of how she handled it? I mean, to David's point, a little bit more comfortable now than she has been in the past.
Yeah, I think there's been a consistent story of growth. She's been in more of these settings. I think we saw that somewhat tonight. I also think to the question about how policy positions have changed, they were clearly ready with an answer about how the values have been consistent. For me, one of the lines that stuck out was, this is a new, I think people are ready for a new way forward. She said that a couple times. It goes to David's point. I don't think there's a policy separation that they've created with Biden. Obviously, she gave a kind of personal defense of him, but they're also very clearly trying to position her as a change candidate in the same way that Donald Trump is positioning himself as a change candidate. In some ways, it feels as if that's going to be the crux of what this comes down to in November, is whether that is bought by the electorate or not.
And interestingly, there is some polling to suggest that it's a battle right now. It's actually a live ball.
It seems that that's where this might live and die, but I think it's really interesting, because for someone who doesn't want to talk about race and gender, who doesn't want to kind of put that identity forward, it is allowing her to make the case of change without kind of saying those words. And so I thought that was really in the air of this speech. But to the point about normal versus weird, the future versus past dichotomy that they're trying to create, I think they landed that tonight. I think they want to present them as a package that is relatable to people, and that is someone you feel familiar, whose story is familiar, whose message is familiar and relatable. And I think that's something that she's grown in, and we saw that this evening.
Interesting. Ashley?
So I think I would break this down into 3 parts: values, vision, and her voice. And I think she made it very clear that she is still committed to her values, to be an American, to be a prosecutor, even though she may have changed on some positions. And she clearly outlined where she had changed. I think on the vision, she attempted to draw the contrast without talking about Donald Trump, but still being very clear and not berating her current boss, actually. And when you think about the opposite ticket of J.D. Vance, where Donald Trump's vice president isn't even on the ticket anymore, we don't need to go down why that is the case, but she was clearly able to draw her vision for how she wants to take the country forward with her opportunity economy, and then her voice. I think so many Americans want to know, who is she and does she have command of her voice? And she answered every question. Now, you might not like the way she answered them, but she answered them as a capable, qualified leader. And I do think she moved the ball forward a little bit. You know, maybe she didn't score a touchdown tonight, but she definitely moved down the field.
All right, Scott.
I agree with Asad about this idea of the question of who's going to change will be the fundamental defining question of the election. And I was sort of watching this, you know, holistically. What is she saying? What does she look like? What's on the screen? So at the beginning, when she's talking about Biden and their record, our screen said, this is called the Chiron, the headline at the bottom. It said, Harris stands by Biden administration economic record. She is making it clear that she will embrace and be a continuation of Biden's economic policy, his record, what they've done. She offered no remorse, no regrets, no introspection about anything they've done. She continued to blame inflation on this fantasy price gouging idea. She had no additional thoughts on the economic situation in the country or what they've done beyond just saying, Joe Biden and I have done a great job. Now, if I were the Trump people, I would be salivating over the idea that that's how they are going to run the race. I don't believe it's tenable. I also thought it was interesting that she didn't take any responsibility at the end for telling the American people that Joe Biden was fine and he was strong. I mean, we all know that's not true. That's why he's out of the race, and she's still standing by the idea that he was fine and he's strong and that he's fine today. Nobody believes that, and I just think at some point, then why isn't he running?
Because he's too old, point blank. Same reason why Donald Trump probably shouldn't be running, because he's too old and out of touch.
I think most Americans know the truth, and when you're running to be president and you're willing to look them in the face and tell them something they know that you know is not true, it does speak a little bit to your character.
Scott, and curious what you think about this, Axe. Will voters care about that part of it, which is kind of backward-looking, or do they care about what's next?
Well, I think the part of what Scott raised that could be problematical if they prosecute it properly is, I think Biden deserves a lot more credit, frankly, for guiding the country through the pandemic and the economic calamity that he walked into than he gets. But inflation over a period of years has been a heavy toll on people here and around the world, but around the world is not relevant here. And so to the degree that they can say, she is going to continue doing exactly what Joe Biden was doing for people who don't have confidence in Biden's policies, that is a prospective problem. I don't think the thing about, this whole thing about, you didn't say it tonight, but you've said before, and I just disagree with this notion that, Dan actually asked a question, well, you've been there for 3.5 years. No vice president makes policy, okay? Let's just make that clear.
Well,
nobody has said this before. Nobody talks about the Pence years, okay?
Well,
nobody talks about the Biden years when Obama was, nobody does that. So, but it is a challenge for her to take credit for the things that are good and to try and walk away from the things that are not.
She did make policy, though. I mean, she said, I was the last person in the room on Afghanistan, and she cast many tie-breaking votes in the Senate.
That's different than saying that she made the decision.
Yeah.
She claimed to be his last and most principal advisor on Afghanistan. That is not. That's her words.
She said she was the last person in the room.
What does that mean to you?
She created the Afghanistan
It means that
policy.
she told him whatever she thought, and he did whatever he thought he wanted to do.
One of the things that struck me about, and as someone who, like Ested, has covered Kamala Harris before, she is a homework doer. And you can see the homework has been done in this interview. And it really kind of makes me wonder about, as we push toward this debate that's coming up, this meeting between these two, what kind of debate sparring partner is she going to be against Trump? And to me, the answer was discipline.
Yeah, she's ready to be on the defense. I don't think that is a difficult place for her to be. I think it's easier for her to be prosecutorial. And I believe, isn't the sparring partner that Trump is preparing with Tulsi Gabbard, who has actually been toe-to-toe with Kamala Harris. So I do think you are going to see kind of an energetic conversation. But part of it is, what is she like on the offense? We know what she's like on the defense.
And what is she like on the off the cuff?
I mean, yes. The question is, how much should she engage at all? I mean, the fact you need to do, you look like you need to do some work here.
I just want to reset for those of us who are joining us. This is breaking news coverage of our exclusive interview with Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. We are going to keep this conversation going. Axelrod, you were just saying.
Yeah, no, I was saying that I guess if I were advising her, I would say don't make Trump big by trying to get into back and forth with him throughout the night. Make him small. I mean, he's going to try and do what Trump does. This is his 7th presidential debate. Nobody's done it more. We know what his habits are. She should have a conversation with the American people about the future that she envisions and spar with him when she has to.
We saw her do that a little bit. I mean, when Dana asked her about Trump saying, well, she just turned black, her answer was, next question, please.
Yes. Yeah. I think she is willing to let others do that work for her and thinks that, and I think this is backed up in both evidence and reporting. People come to her when Trump attacks her in that way. That is a good thing for her. I think it rallies people around her. I mean, but I think we should think about the difference in context between 2019 and now. It wasn't just that it was off the cuff that was the problem. It was that the 2019 primary was one that had so many litmus tests about very specific kind of progressive, moderate policy questions that I think really caused her to feel torn between a lot of situations. And we had a lot of things that she ended up having to roll back the next day. Against Donald Trump, there is an ability for her to be focused on kind of consistent Democratic messaging. And I think that allows a greater comfort and ease that we saw play out today.
Let's not be mistaken. I mean, Donald Trump is tall and very loud.
Yes.
And he is very persistent. It's not going to be so easy to just say, okay, let's move on. He's going to be right there.
Yes, but I think you have to play your game. We've been talking about moving the ball down the field. It's like you are on offense. If you
an idea I have could actually change that. You put the two candidates in two soundproof bulletproof containers, and then the volume, and then they flip a switch. If they want to ask a question to one candidate, they flip a switch, and the volumes, and you can hear what they're saying, and you can hear what the candidate is saying inside the box because their microphone's on. And you could just flip a switch again, and it turns the mic off. That would be very helpful. Again, helpful to just shut Donald Trump up, since he's a you know what I mean, right? Oh boy. You can't. That nobody will be able to hear anything on the here inside the box unless the mic's on. And the box will also be bulletproof just in case. Tell me what you think of that idea. And now let's get back to this.
The vice president is not very tall. She is a petite woman. Let him look like the bully. Let him throw out red meat, and you rise above the occasion. That's why I think it was so important that she didn't answer the question about race, because actually that behavior is below the office of the president.
I think she answered the right way, but there was another element to it that I think in a debate is going to be very important. That behavior of Donald Trump's really does raise the question, do you want this for the next 4 years, or do you want someone who's focused on your problems? I think that pivot works.
I think that's true for the debate. I think for tonight, I think she got that part exactly right. Yeah. That's what I would have counseled.
And you guys have underscored one of the bigger differences I've seen between her approach to this versus Biden, which is that she focuses very much on saying, I acknowledge that this economy doesn't feel good to you. There's like a shift in tone. And similarly with Trump, it's much more, we saw this during the convention, undermining him and making him seem small. As she said, go small, rather than the epic bully that Biden had talked about.
I think that's because she talked about the economy had crashed under Donald Trump because of COVID. And nobody could anticipate that was going to happen, and that they did work to recover, and that there is still more work to be done. And I think that acknowledgement of
what she doesn't say is actually the data is really good if you look at the GDP.
That's right, because nobody cares about
hearing the first 2 years.
But I didn't. I'll disagree with you on the walkbacks a little bit. I just think it's jarring to go through the progression. You wanted to ban fracking. Yes. Now you don't. Yes. And why is that? Well, my values haven't changed. I mean, that progression to me must sound disorienting to the people in Pennsylvania.
Actually, let me play that sound just so people who may have missed it. This is what she said.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America, and by extension the globe, around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California, prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed.
My values have not changed. I mean, actually, interestingly, as I listened to that soundbite, I was thinking to myself, well, this will be a test of whether the left is willing to kind of be in a pragmatic space, because she's basically saying, you know, I believe in climate change, but let's put aside fracking for a second and do other things instead.
I think what she is doing is saying that climate is a crisis, and we have one side, maybe not you, Scott, but that have people who deny climate change and don't want to address it. But there are many ways to get to solutions. And so when she talked about it, she didn't do it when she was vice president, so it shouldn't be disorienting for voters to say that she won't do it when she's president. She also talked about that there are many ways to get to where we want to get to, and that there's ways to measure it. And so she talks about the things that she had to, which is not banning fracking. I think that she answered that question very well. I also don't think that the progressive left, particularly those who care about climate, will balk at that issue. Maybe they will. They're not a monolith. But because Joe Biden has been one of the best presidents in our history on climate. So it is a yes and that's what you have to do when you're president.
The other thing, Scott, is she is not running against the Lord Almighty. She is running against Donald Trump, who himself has had a lot of position changes over the last many years.
Well, that's certainly what she wants to do, and what Trump wants to make this into is she's running to continue Biden. I mean, you're setting up the framing correctly. She wants to make it a referendum on Trump. He wants to make it a referendum on Biden. Look, I think the two biggest issues coming out of Biden for her are the economic policies, which she clearly wants to embrace, but also the immigration policies. Dana asked her if she had anything to say about what they did for 3.5 years leading up until the back and forth this year. Completely sidestepped it, did not answer it. She goes back to her time as Attorney General. But again, absolutely nothing, no responsibility, no reflection at all on the day one executive actions or anything else they did for 3.5 years, or anything she said in her previous campaign, which was to have the most permissive immigration structure. She's trying to skip a block of time at the debate. Trump cannot allow it.
Yeah. I'm intrigued in this for completely different reasons, which is that we've seen the Democratic Party, in a way, move further to the right on the issue of immigration. I think prior to this point, there was a lot of concern about it being a humanitarian crisis, talking about putting children in cages. It was drawing a delineation between these big bads who are harming families and us who will be different. Now you have a candidate who's basically saying, actually, the thing I'm going to sign on day one is the thing we wrote together with Republicans to make them happy. And that's fascinating, right? It's a completely different position for the party to be in.
And you know, you're doing some deep work on her. You did some deep work on her. I did a podcast with her when she just came to the Senate. My sense is that's who she is. I mean, I think she's a pragmatic politician. I think she's progressive in her thinking, but a pragmatic progressive, which is kind of what Barack Obama was, to be honest.
Also because Biden did reverse some policies, but he kept others. It's not a very obvious thing to look at.
What I thought was missing, I mean, she explained her position on immigration. One of the questions was, you said, like she did with many things in 2020, that you don't believe it's a crime to cross the border if you do so illegally. And her position now is we should enforce the laws. She doesn't explain the delta between those two things.
Those months, they weren't it wasn't 2020, it was 2019, because she never made it to 2020.
That's right.
And the reason she didn't make it to 2020 was she was taking a bunch of positions that were the state-of-the-art political advice that did not really reflect what she felt comfortable with, and she did not seem connected to the words she was speaking.
This is different from my values. I think there's something more than my values.
I don't think so. I think my values are that there needs to be a pathway for people to come to this country that is legal. And for decades, politicians have failed to deliver that for people. And so her values is there needs to be a pathway. I will compromise. I will compromise with Republicans. It won't be that Donald Trump will compromise with Democrats.
Democrats have changed their values on immigration.
Let me just finish this on this. Okay, the other thing that she talked about is that she did acknowledge, I know you want to call her the border czar, but what she really was tasked with doing was talking about the root causes. And when you look at the migration patterns from the Northern Triangle that are now crossing the borders, those numbers are down. Is the problem solved? By no means.
You said she was, in 2019, that she was taking the state-of-the-art political advice, and that's why she did what she did. Wouldn't that bother, if you didn't know anything about this person who wanted to be the president, wouldn't it bother you to know that they might have certain instincts or values, but they're willing to set those aside as long as the political consultants come in and tell you something?
I guess my answer to you is I would take some solace in the fact that they have values and principles and that they're not entirely transactional. And that is a distinction with the candidate she is running against.
Not on immigration.
But even that was that was a good. He's a marketer, and he throws ideas out, and he sees what lights up the crowd, and then he goes all. And that's how the wall came about. But Ashley, I want to say one thing about what you said. You asked, would progressives stick with her? You gave sort of the progressive interpretation of what you heard. What I think she's saying is that any immigration policy has to include as part of it, not in order to mollify Republicans, but as a matter of public policy, has to include strong enforceable borders. I don't think that's a concession on her part. I think that's what she actually believes.
For one, progressives have already taken a lot for this moment. I think the question of whether they stick with her has already been asked and answered, to be honest. She's changed enough positions, and folks have really supported even within that. But I would say, from my voter perspective or talking to like folks about how they're making these decisions, it's not as if it's not as if no one gets that Kamala Harris has changed positions from then to now. It's that the change in the positions doesn't feel as drastic as the person she's across from. So it is up to Donald Trump to make a substantive-based argument about why this matters in a way we have not seen him do or seen the ability for him to do in that time. So I guess it's like, if this was happening in isolation, I do think it would be fair to ask Harris what has changed between now and then. I remember asking her this when I interviewed her in 2019 on criminal justice reform, because a lot of the things that she concluded in her plan to run for president are things she did not support as Attorney General. And so I remember saying, what has changed? And there was an answer that was something, about the politics has somewhat changed. And that wasn't the language specifically. I don't want to say that. But it was the winds have kind of changed. I think that's happening from then to now also. And they're trying to make that values consistency. I don't think that's a bad argument. I think people have a sense of understanding of those values. But to your point, it sounds like politics, and people have a willingness to accept a level of politics from these folks.
There is a baseline acknowledgement.
Because Donald Trump has done that 10 times over.
The other point that you made is that this is about Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. And if Scott Jennings were standing up against Kamala Harris, we might be having a different conversation, but it's actually Donald Trump.
On that front, I have an announcement to make.
It'll be someone else.
I knew this was coming.
And I'll be his vice president.
Yeah, go for it. Everyone, stick around for us. We've got a lot more coming up. Dana Bash will be here back to talk about her exclusive interview with the vice president and Governor Walz. And we're going to pull back the curtain on what will go down as a fateful day for Democrats and a phone call that changed history.
It was a Sunday, so here I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
My family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces.
CNN Newsnight with Abby Phillip is brought to you by Sotyktu. Find out if Sotyktu is the treatment you've been looking for.
Smile, you found it. The feeling of finding psoriasis can't filter out the real you. So go ahead, live unfiltered with the one and only Sotyktu, a once-daily pill for moderate to severe plaque psoriasis and the chance at clear or almost clear skin. It's like the feeling of finding you're so ready for your close-up, or finding you don't have to hide your skin, just your background. Once daily Sotyktu was proven better, getting more people clearer skin than the leading pill. Don't take if you're allergic to Sotyktu. Serious reactions can occur. Sotyktu can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB. Serious infections, cancers including lymphoma, muscle problems, and changes in certain labs have occurred. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, liver or kidney problems, high triglycerides, or had a vaccine or plan to. Sotyktu is a TYK2 inhibitor. TYK2 is part of the JAK family. It's not known if Sotyktu has the same risks as JAK inhibitors. Find what plaque psoriasis has been hiding. There's only one Sotyktu, so ask for it by name. So clearly you. Sotyktu.
Wait, Noom can design a personalized weight loss plan for me? Whoa. I'm vegan.
I have a
Second at 9 on CNN.
Back.
We are back now with more of our special coverage of CNN's exclusive interview with the Democratic presidential ticket, Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz. For the first time, we are hearing about how President Biden broke the news to his own vice president that he was dropping out of the race. Listen.
I'm just curious, staying on President Biden, when he called you and said he was pulling out of the race, what was that like? And did he offer to endorse you right away, or did you ask for it?
It was a Sunday, so here, I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
My family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces, and we had just had pancakes and, you know, Auntie, can I have more bacon? Yes, I'll make you more bacon. And then we were sitting down to do a puzzle. And the phone rang, and it was Joe Biden. And he told me what he had decided to do. And I asked him, are you sure? And he said yes. And that's how I learned about it.
And what about the endorsement? Did you ask for it?
He was very clear that he was going to support me.
So when he called to tell you, he said, I'm pulling out of the race and I'm going to support you.
Well, my first thought was not about me, to be honest with you. My first thought was about him, to be honest.
Let's bring in Dana Bash. She's in Savannah, Georgia, where this interview took place. Dana, that is very, very interesting. And for those of us who lived through that weekend in a lot of different ways, she found out that morning and she asked him, are you sure? That's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. First of all, I just want to say that I wasn't sure what she was going to say and what she would offer, if anything, about that conversation, which was obviously private, but it was also historic, which is clearly why she wanted to get some of it on the record for history now, because it's going to come out probably eventually. But are you sure? You're exactly right. That kind of moment where, look, it wasn't as if it was a surprise in the instant that it happened. A lot of people weren't sure that the president was going to finally decide, you know what, I'm out of here. But obviously we remember the pressure was mounting. We do know that from our reporting that just in case, she was not doing anything, but just in case some of the people who are in the Kamala Harris orbit were just kind of getting everything ready just in case it happened. But that was a human moment. You know, this is a man who took her out of the United States Senate, made her his running mate. She made history with that. And he was giving her some pretty big news about himself. And then, of course, it was off to the races for her to try to do something even more historic, to be the president, but also just with regard to the campaign process, to scramble to secure the nomination, which wasn't really, if you remember, Abby, it wasn't really set in stone that she was going to get it as quickly as she did. Yeah. We weren't sure what the process was, but she sewed it up in about 24 hours. I also just want to say that just that human element there of what she was doing, you know this, you've covered her, and I know a lot of people at the table. She loves the Sunday dinners. She loves to cook. Being there in the morning with her family, making them bacon, about to do a puzzle. it was just kind of the picture of it all.
It's certainly not what you would expect.
It's really stunning.
It's not what you would expect if somebody were, say, expecting big news that weekend, having the grandnieces over, going about your morning. I mean, it really was, despite all of the talk around it, she was continuing on, and you know this as well as I do. When you talk to people around her, that was the sort of mentality that came from the top down in Harris world, was that they were going to be blinders on moving forward. And in that moment, that is exactly what she was doing.
Yeah, it was. And she was very careful. You know, we've heard Republicans say, oh, it was, well, the former president, it was a coup and she threw him overboard. That is not what happened. There were some Democrats who wanted him to go. She personally, I know from your reporting, my reporting, everybody else, she was being very, very cautious and very respectful of Joe Biden to let him make his decision in his own way, in his own time.
All right, Dana, stay with us because we'll be back with you shortly for more from this great interview. But I want to bring it into the panel here. The word loyalty is something I heard from people in Harris world about how she approached what was happening with Joe Biden. But I know, Scott, I mean, obviously we've been talking about this on this show a lot because I know that you feel very strongly that maybe she should have, in your view, been more honest. I want to play what she told Dana about that question of, what did you tell the American people about what Joe Biden was like as president, and was it the truth?
Right after the debate, you insisted that President Biden is extraordinarily strong. Given where we are now, do you have any regrets about what you told the American people?
No, not at all. Not at all. I have served with President Biden for almost 4 years now, and I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest honors of my career, truly.
Sorry about that.
He cares so deeply about the American people. He has the intelligence, the commitment, and the judgment and disposition that I think the American people rightly deserve in their president. By contrast, the former president has none of that.
It was a carefully worded answer, but one that really was very careful not to even in the slightest way undermine President Biden.
Yeah, I sort of simultaneously admire the loyalty, actually, because it would be tempting to just say, you know what, this was ridiculous, and he made it. But she didn't. But at the same time, you know, before he got out of the race, upwards of 90% of the American people thought he was too old to run again, and she was out there in the face of that saying, no, he's fine. She's still saying that. And no one really believes it. So I guess the real fundamental question is, are people going to give her the grace on that and say, well, she's got to say that because it's her boss? Or
give her the credit for having grace.
Right.
Which is, I think,
that's the point that she
one
was
footnote that we're not talking about, and maybe it's not relevant, but obviously there's so much about how she is where she is, in part because of her friendship with the late Beau Biden. There was a real friendship there. There is some respect there, and I think it did affect the relationship that she has with Joe Biden. I don't think that loyalty is perfunctory because there is a personal connection there.
And even when a year or two ago, when people were speculating about whether Joe Biden should throw Kamala Harris off the ticket, that loyalty played a key role in the reason why Biden was very tuned all of that stuff out. She has been like this since the day she was selected and made a very clear decision that this is how she was going to see the role of president. And I think that served her and her relationship with Biden, who feels like that's how he treated that role. I think it informed her decision for Tim Walz, who kind of said that he would be a similarly deferential figure.
But it's not just this interpersonal stuff. I mean, it's also on the policy.
Yes.
I mean, Dana asked her, you've said Bidenomics is a success. And she said effectively, yes. She talked about prescription drug prices. She talked about manufacturing jobs. She talked about bringing down child poverty. She didn't back away from even the idea of
And you know what? If you, I'm sorry, Ashley, go ahead.
No, please.
No, if you ask the American people about any of those things, they would give those things high marks. The problem that the president got into is he was personalizing all of this, and any criticism of the economy he took as a personal affront to him. He thought shepherding the economy through this disaster was one of his achievements, and those points were achievements. What she did in this interview that he never did was say all those things are true, and yet people were feeling the effects of costs And that's something we have to redouble our efforts to address. Yeah. That is the right way to answer the question. Yeah.
I agree. That's why I let you go first. No, I totally agree. I just want to say one thing on the loyalty and the vice president. I'll sound like a broken record. I don't think that's the fight you want to pick with this ticket. When you look
I'm not picking any fights.
Are you not?
No.
I just don't think it's something that you need to double down on.
I'm not the one here. I'm not the number here. I'm not picking fights.
Okay. Well, I don't think Donald Trump wants to pick that fight when we look about what happened to his last vice president. I think there is a constant contrast that we owe it to the American people to remind them of, is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were loyal. I remember at the night he spoke, she went up and said, I love you. Like, it's real, and that's not what we can talk.
It is such an important point, because I think sometimes we get caught up in the spin. The spin that this was a coup does not make any sense, because Joe Biden himself made the decision to step aside, A, and B, the two of them still apparently maintain a very good relationship. We saw it on full display what was it, a week ago?
Well, her involvement in it may have been more minimal, but there were people pushing him out.
Let's be honest. It feels bizarre to still be talking about something weeks ago, and on the debate stage, is that how you want to spend
this
time?
It's economy, immigration, food.
But you know something? There's a level at which this presidential politics works that is nonlinear, that is not all about paint to dot kind of policy discussions. It's about who is this person? Yes. Yeah. What is their character? And in that sense, and that's why I said at the beginning of this discussion, I was actually impressed by the way she talked about the president, because it reflected character. And I think people want character in their president. They may not be thinking they're going to find it in Donald Trump.
All right, Ashley, Scott, and Ested, thank you all for being here. Everyone else, don't go anywhere. A lot more ahead. Coming up next, Governor Walz responds to the continuing questions about his military record.
My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do.
Every weekday morning.
Here are the 5 things you need to know to start your day.
CNN's 5 Things with Kate Baldwin, streaming weekdays on Max.
You know, there is a prophecy about the first woman coming to office. If you want proof, just look at The Simpsons. I mean, they got many things right that were destined to happen. They got many things right. 9/11, Donald Trump becoming president, and perhaps Kamala Harris is the one that will become the first lady to become president of the United States, just like in the Simpsons prophecy. Did you ask me? I don't know how the heck they predicted all that stuff. Predicted that stuff again. The closure of Toys R Us and all that stuff. I don't know how they predicted it, but it came true. So could Kamala Harris be the one the Simpsons prophesized would become the first female president? Let me know in the comments section or in the live chat, okay? Now let's get back to the show.
And family recommend Total Beets. Now you can find Total Beets blood pressure chews at Walmart, so you can boost nitric oxide, support blood pressure, and improve heart health. Rush to Walmart and find Total Beets.
A CNN special event, the ABC News presidential.
Mark that on your calendar, people.
Be simulcast September 10th at 9.
Vice presidential nominee Tim Walz responding to Republicans who called him out for claiming that he carried guns into war. Listen.
You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is.
Did you misspeak, as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct.
I just want to remind you, here are those 2018 comments that Republicans have been highlighting. Listen.
I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army, and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
And I carried in war is the operative part there. Again, Tim Walz was never in combat, but he did serve in the National Guard for 24 years. Let's bring in Dana Bash again. She's in Savannah, Georgia, where this interview took place. Dana, an important exchange on an issue that has been dogging him since he became the vice presidential nominee.
Yes, no question about it. And look, this is such a different process than any campaign goes through to pick the running mate. There usually is a pretty substantial vetting process. I don't know if the Harris campaign, the baby campaign that it was at the time, knew about these comments. My suspicion is no, because I think they used it in some early videos. But it's the kind of thing that you want to kind of be buttoned up about and not take weeks to kind of clean up. It is the first interview that he has done, so it's the first chance he has gotten to try to clean it up, aside from that spokesperson from the campaign that I was talking about. But it's the kind of broader question of who is this guy, and the way that they put him out there at the beginning of when he was picked and also at the convention is kind of who he is. He is a coach. He is a father, and that's definitely the kind of person they would have put out there. They're talking less about him as a veteran. He has a tremendous record as a veteran, and he is somebody who served, and, you know, a lot of people say he should be thanked for it, and I'm not here to disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, the 24 years are 24 years, so that speaks for itself. The question is now whether voters will care about the other part of this. Dana, thank you very much for all of this great interview, and for joining us.
Thanks, Abby. Thanks for having me.
And joining our panel here, Sharon Michael Singleton, Jamal Simmons, and Maggie Haberman. Maggie, this is a core part of what the Trump campaign has been spending a lot of their time on. The Trump campaign manager, Trump himself. Are they frustrated, though, that it feels like maybe it hasn't stuck as much as they would like it to?
There is a singular obsession that the Trump campaign has with this issue, as you note. My biggest, and I don't think it's an illegitimate point to ask questions about, but Tim Walz is the number 2. He's not running for president. Kamala Harris is the number 1. And so they have spent, I think it's 5 weeks now, focusing on this issue. And for 3 of those weeks, at least, they were doing nothing to define the vice president. So, you know, I think they are frustrated in part because there were so many attacks on J.D. Vance, and J.D. Vance had a rough time in that first week out after the RNC. And I think a lot of this is about that, frankly. I have seen little sign that voters care much about this. Again, they are voting for the person who is running for president, not the number 2, which is also true with Trump and J.D. Vance.
Yeah, and look, we see that in the numbers. I mean, J.D. Vance has really taken a hit in his unfavorables.
No question.
But Jamal, just real talk, though, why not just say you misspoke?
Well,
that was a little surprising.
He did say, I own my mistakes. He did say that in his answer. I own my mistakes. So I think he went on to talk about, you know, put them into some context. Here's the reality. I think, as Maggie was just saying, people aren't really judging this. When I was in the vice president's office, people spent a lot of time going after Kamala Harris on the Republican side. Turns out, didn't really make much of a difference, right? As soon as she launched as a presidential candidate, nobody seemed to remember what happened before when she was a vice presidential candidate. The thing that struck me the most when I was watching that, she said something that was very Kamala Harris. She started talking about the opportunity economy. She started talking about investing in families. And when she did that, she said, so that people can buy car seats, clothes, cribs. It was very specific. This is the way that when she goes out and she campaigns with the American people, she talks to them not just about the big policy, but about the way that they interact with that policy in their own specific lives.
Michael, what do you make of Walz, by the way, was at this interview in a way that is not atypical for, a post-convention interview, but what did you make of it?
I don't think it really matters whether or not he was there or not. I know some conservatives have attempted to make a big deal about this. You're right. Most voters don't care about the number 2. They care about the number 1. But I do think there's a possibility for this to become an issue. He could have just said, look, I misspoke. It happens all the time in politics in the heat of the moment. I think most people would understand that, but that's not what he said. He said, my record speaks for itself. Well, does it? We don't know what your record is. Maybe if you're in your home state, people may know, but not the American people. Then he said, well, I wear my emotions on my chest. Well, that showcases some level of instability, not stability. Then he said, well, people know me. Again, no, we don't know you. That's why you're doing this interview. Then he said, well, my wife said my grammar sometimes isn't always correct. Those were terrible answers. And so you're literally making an issue that should really be a non-issue, potentially an issue, by the way he responded, when he simply could have said, look, I misspoke. I apologize. Let's move on to something else. And he didn't. As is often the case, the VP nominee is the person at the ticket has the less experience than the other person. And so you get issues like this that come up. Everyone, hold on. We've got much more to discuss ahead. Coming up next, Vice President Harris says that she's made her position on fracking very clear. CNN's Daniel Dale will be here to fact-check that.
Which I disagree with, but it doesn't change my vote of her.
And then our world changed.
TV on the Edge premieres Sunday, September 22nd at 9 on CNN.
Which doesn't change my vote. Which doesn't change my support for her. I'm still going to support her because this is no longer Democrats versus Republicans. This is democracy versus fascism. With the Republicans being the fascists and the Democrats being the democracy. This election is very important. Extremely important. Heck, as the days get closer, and I still don't have ways to spread the message, the more crazy I'm gonna get. That's why I need an attorney to get back in social media, fix these issues. Zoom, Facebook, and Google/YouTube. All right. The problem with this is that you get a small size window. Okay.
Power of 3 with Ozempic. Honey?
But the gains are pumping.
Yeah, the market's closed.
Futures don't sleep in the after hours, bro.
Dad, is Mommy a finance bro?
She switched careers to make money for your wedding.
Which is why I'm trying to do fiber to get the money I need. I'm not telling you how much I got right now, but if Social Security vanishes, then I'm screwed. And so are others.
He was Superman from day one.
Which may worsen kidney problems.
Dang it, I wanted to show you that. I mistimed it. Let's see about them.
Because this system actually detects snoring, then adjusts to help reduce it. Don't miss our biggest sale of the year with savings up to $700 on select adjustable mattress sets.
You were Superman from day one.
This part changed my life.
Superman, crazy. Just that simple little thing over the horse.
I ruined my life and everybody else's. Maybe we should let me go.
She came flying in and she just yelled, "I love you. I love you."
And then she said the words that saved my life. You're still you, and I love you. I needed to do something for everyone else in the same condition.
Sorry you did.
The Christopher and Dana Reed Paralysis Act.
People are walking because of him.
What is a hero? I think a hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. I wouldn't have missed this for the world.
Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. Only in theaters. Get tickets now. Rated PG-13.
There's plenty to fact check from tonight's town hall. CNN's Daniel Dale joins us now with more. Daniel, let's listen to these comments that Vice President Harris made about her position on fracking.
When you were in Congress, you supported the Green New Deal. And in 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
And I'd like to know why.
In 2019, I believe, at a town hall, you said, you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
So Daniel Dale is here. Daniel, she said there that she's made her position clear in 2020. Tell us what the truth is of that.
The fact check bottom line, Abby, is that she did not actually make clear at a 2020 debate that she had changed her previous support for a fracking ban. So let me take you through this kind of saga. So here's what she said at a CNN climate town hall in 2019 on the subject of a fracking ban.
Will you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking your first day in office, adding the United States to the list of countries who have banned this devastating practice?
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yeah.
That was quite clear. So she ended her 2020 presidential run in December 2019. The only debate she participated in 2020 was the general election debate with then Vice President Mike Pence. And I went over the transcript of that debate tonight. Nowhere in there does she make clear that she had abandoned her previous support for a fracking ban. Rather, she repeated that Joe Biden, the head of the Democratic ticket at the time, would himself not ban fracking. So listen to what she actually said in that 2020 debate.
Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that. I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking.
So it makes perfect sense that at the time she was speaking on behalf of Biden, the president, not the vice president, sets administration policy. But maybe other people feel differently. I certainly did not hear anywhere in there Kamala Harris saying that she personally had abandoned her previously expressed 2019 view. Rather, again, she was speaking for Joe Biden.
All right, Daniel Dale, thank you very much. Donald Trump, he's been giving his thoughts about tonight's interview on Truth Social. He spoke to some reporters. I mean, it's gone about how you would expect. I'm going to bring a little bit of our break conversation into the conversation here because, Audie, you pointed out, we are talking about fracking, which I am not sure a whole lot of people are talking about, except maybe in Pennsylvania. Is this kind of where the Trump argument against Harris is centering on, is these past statements about issues like fracking, the Tim Walz stuff? I mean, is that where their heads are at?
They're not quite sure where their heads are at. There's a bunch of advisors who would like his head to be in a certain place, which is essentially tying her to Joe Biden. There are others who believe that there is opportunity in pointing out that she took a series of very liberal positions in 2019 that she has moved away from since. They see that as an opportunity to basically just call her liberal over and over and over again. And Trump has been doing that. Trump has said that a number of times. It's going to a bunch of these places. Yeah. There has not been one single line that they have used against her, except for, I think it's dangerously liberal, is the tagline in the commercials, and that's where that
Are they aware that there is a bit of a contradiction between those things? To paint her as the liberal of 2019, but then also the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris that's maybe more center-left?
Yeah, they don't have a thesis statement here in their column, so they don't actually really know what they're arguing about Kamala Harris, about the vice president. I thought the last sentence that she gave in the fracking answer was actually the best sentence of the entire answer. And if she had started that sentence and left it there, it would have been fine. She said, "I learned that if you can grow the green economy without banning fracking." That's the answer. Right?
I learned, which is actually a really smart phrase.
I agree. I like that.
Really helpful. Yeah, and she did talk about traveling and listening to people and so on. I mean, that is something I think people can understand, but they also can understand that she's telling them, this is what my position is now. I don't know that the average voter is going to linger on this, but to your point, don't dash off the notion that this is an important issue in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania may decide this election, so that's why the Trump people are trying to focus on this issue, and that's why she was very, very.
And it's a tough.
They're making an argument, Abby, that this is really all going to be about these fine policy questions. And I think the reality here is this is a change election. Kamala Harris is the face and voice of change. Donald Trump is an era that people are kind of exhausted with, and they're ready to move on. And maybe some of these things will matter in some discrete places, but really the reason why 44,000 people are getting on calls and thousands of people are showing up at events is because they want something new.
But you know what? It matters to people.
The biggest problem for Democrats in the last two cycles has been largely that there is a sense in parts of America that there's a cultural antagonism against people who live in places where fracking is an issue that matters. So yes, it's about, whether or not, she cares about people like you, but I think this is a proxy for that.
I mean, it's thousands of jobs for people who live in Pennsylvania. And when you say that you support the Green New Deal, but you also support fracking, those two ideals are not consistent. The end result of supporting the Green New Deal is to end fossil fuels. You can't say I support this, but also, by the way, you can have your fracking too. And so for people in Pennsylvania, those skeptical folks that are in the middle, that 5% that may determine which way that state goes, they're going to look at that and they're going to say, well, is this political pandering? Is this political expediency? Is the vice president saying whatever she needs to say to potentially win, but she doesn't believe it? And we weren't clear. She did not give a clear or decisive answer in that regard.
I don't really think there's that many people who are going to be actually weighing whether they think that she has true convictions on these things or not. They're going to be weighing whether she can convince them that she is going to do enough to make their lives better, and that is going to come down in various discrete ways in very narrow slices of the electorate.
Yeah, perhaps not on any one particular issue. Everyone, stick with me. We'll be right back.
A CNN special event, the ABC News
Mark your calendars.
Simulcast, September 10th at 9.
Wake at any time. Think you are not at risk for shingles? It's time to wake up, because shingles could wake up in you. If you're over 50, talk to your doctor or pharmacist about shingles prevention.
The Tempur-Pedic breed.
I'm going through this like a oh, I can't speak Western.
Savings up
Cowboy
to
talk.
$700 on select adjustable mattress sets.
Meet Jack, an ordinary guy with an extraordinary pair of pants. Introducing the Jet Setter Tech Pants by Jack Archer. Crafted for comfort, stain and water resistant. The Jet Setter Tech Pants by Jack Archer. Get yours today at jackarcher.com/TV.
We're excited to do business with you, but before we sign, I gotta ask.
Sure, anything.
We searched you online, and maybe you can explain this?
Can't believe that garbage is still coming in. That is so false.
Frustrated with your online search results? Call Reputation Defender today to join tens of thousands who've improved their online reputation. Get your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 1-877-866-8555.
Donald Trump should take that test and see how he squares. Who agrees with me? Who agrees with me? Put in the chat box if you agree with me. Or the nice.
Hey, enter $5 and get $50 instantly. Prize Picks, run your game.
Closed captioning is brought to you by Skechers hands-free slip-ins.
This tiny home trend, now this is more like it. The same goes for my footwear. So I went hands-free with wide-fit Skechers slip-ins. Try wide-fit Skechers slip-ins.
And my panel is back. No one at this table knows more about how to win elections than David Axelrod. So what does Vice President Harris need to do from this point forward?
Look, on one point, she was clearly trying to burnish tonight her commitment to this opportunity economy, to building the middle class. She has specific points she wants to make. The next thing she has to do is throw it into a more comparative frame. He wants tax cuts for billionaires. I want tax cuts for families with children. He wants to end the Affordable Care Act. I want to strengthen it and expand it and make sure that more people have health care in this country. I think she needs to paint a picture of the choice, the economic choice. And if she's successful, she can win the economic issue, certainly neutralize it.
I wonder, do you think that Kamala Harris, the fighter, came across in this interview tonight with Dana Bash?
No, intentionally not.
Nope. Why?
Because I think that she has made a conscious choice that she is going to try to do as little as possible to avoid being caricatured as angry. I think she is very aware that Trump has been trying to race bait about her for weeks now. It hasn't been remotely subtle. And I think that she is trying to avoid playing into any caricatures that way. I also just think that one of the contrast points between her and Donald Trump is he is presenting a lot of anger. If you look at Truth Social, it is he went on a sort of a spree over the last 24 hours, QAnon curious and all kinds of things, and you know, his political opponents in jumpsuits. And she's smiling and she's looking happy. And I think that they make the bet that the public would like to feel better than it has.
So there's the joy of it all. But I mean, there's a populist energy in the country right now where people want to know who's going to take it to the man for them. And that used to be part of her portfolio, but not so much anymore?
I don't think it is on stage, but we haven't seen her at the debate yet. I think people know this about her, that she's a prosecutor, that she can go after him. It's something that Democrats have been excited to see about her. I think we saw it in 2022 and 23 when she was making this case about abortion and abortion rights, and she was out there every day arguing it. This is something I think we're going to see when you get to the debate. You just may not see it on stage because right now she's still getting the country comfortable with who she is. And as Maggie said a second ago, one of those things is a joyful warrior.
The thing I keep coming back to is discipline. You can say what you want about Vice President Harris, but she's got it, and Trump does not.
Yeah, I mean, look, she is disciplined, and ideally Republicans will want to draw the contrast. One of the things she mentioned in her economic plan, giving out, I think, a $25,000 tax credit to new home buyers. And to me, I was a bit dismayed because that's not really the problem. It's a volume problem, being the former deputy chief of staff at HUD.
I just have to interject
we don't
to say
have enough
Donald
houses
Trump
available.
today said that he was going to have the government pay
well,
for
I have a problem with that as well. Because that's not the role of government. But with that said, a disciplined Trump would point the contrast. It's not about providing a tax credit. What's your plan to create more houses in the market, generally speaking?
Disciplined Trump.
Well, I mean, David, I'm a strategist, so I mean, I have to say what he should do, right?
He is laying out the ideal case scenario for Republicans. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Laura Coates Live starts right now.
All right, let's see what she does.
Welcome to a special edition of Laura Coates Live on this major night in American politics. Vice President Kamala Harris sitting down for her very first interview since becoming the Democratic nominee. We're going to break it all down for you this hour, the key moments, the new reaction we're getting in, and what it all means for the race moving forward with just 68 days to go until the general election. And by the way, just 12 days until the expected debate. In a moment, I'll be joined by the Harris campaign's co-chair, Mitch Landrieu, and one of Trump's top allies, Republican Congressman Mike Walz of Florida. My colleague Dana Bash covered a lot of ground in this interview with Harris and her running mate, Governor Tim Walz. It was about 27 minutes long. and she dove right into one of the main criticisms that Harris has been facing ever since she got to the top of the ticket. How she explains her shifts, or as her critics would say, her flip-flops on some very key issues.
In 2019, I believe, at a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
What made you change that position at the time?
Well, let's be clear. My values have not changed. What I have seen is that we can grow and we can increase a thriving clean energy economy without banning fracking.
Just one other question about something that you said in 2019 when you first ran. There was a debate. You raised your hand when asked whether or not the border should be decriminalized. Do you still believe that?
I believe there should be consequence. We have laws that have to be followed and enforced that address and deal with people who cross our border illegally, and there should be consequence.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you explained some of here, in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed.
With me now, Brian Lanza, former Deputy Communications Director for the Trump 2016 campaign, Karen Finney, CNN political commentator, Alex Thompson, CNN political analyst and national political reporter at Axios, Ashley Etienne, former Communications Director for Vice President Harris, and Kristen Soltis Anderson, CNN political commentator and Republican pollster. I will say a dynamite roundtable, well, half roundtable discussion. I want to get right into it, though, Ashley, because there was a lot at stake for an interview like this. There are very few data points for the voters to look at. You've got this, you've got the debate, you've got obviously rallies and in between. But a key goal of this interview was to be able to go in depth and understand more of her policy positions. Did she accomplish that?
I think she did. I mean, I think also part of the goal was to also answer the criticisms that was coming from the Republican Party and from Donald Trump. And I think she did that. I think the other thing she achieved so especially well is she looked in command. She looked strong. She looked very comfortable answering those very tough questions. And I think hats off to her. I mean, she's demonstrating that she's ready for the job, that she's can handle the tough questions. The criticism's not affecting her in any sort of real way. But I would love to well, I know we're probably going to get to the question about her.
Go ahead, get to it.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, I think the part that I thought was the strongest was this answer about my values haven't changed. That was the strongest answer. You know, I've done two tours of duty in the White House, and I will tell you, you don't know what you don't know until you get into that room. And just day one, we put her in the PDB, the Presidential Daily Briefing with the President, and that is transformative. When you get into that room and you hear what is not being reported on the news about the state of our nation, about the state of our world and what's at stake. I mean, that transformed you. When you spend 3 years on the trail talking and meeting with people and listening and hearing from you, that transforms you. And she's been transformed by this particular role. The only person in this dynamic that has not been transformed in 8 years is Donald Trump. He's the same guy that came down that escalator calling Mexicans rapists. He has not been transformed, not by anything he's seen in the White House or his engagements with the American people. So I think that was a strong answer. And to say that my values have remained core and centered and have centered me throughout, I thought was strong. And I think it's something that is very relatable. And that's what the American people want in their leader. They want someone who's going to take information, process it, and have that inform their decision making. And that's what she demonstrated.
You don't agree?
Listen, the American people want a better economy. They want inflation addressed. They want to be able to afford the groceries this weekend. They want to be able to afford gas prices. That's what the American people want. That's what voters are telling us that the American people are asking for. Her interview, she checked a box. She spoke for 16 minutes. I don't think it answered any of the policy questions that are sort of where does she stand now. And I think the one question that she sort of delved into was fracking. And we learned after the fact that she made this declarative statement. I made my position known in 2020 during the debate of where I stand. Well, that position in 2020 in that debate was not actually her position that she was stating. She was stating Joe Biden's position on fracking, that he wouldn't switch on it. So, I still have questions where she is on fracking. We've spent a lot of time. She clearly doesn't want to answer the question, and I'll tell you why she doesn't want to answer the fracking question. Because her San Francisco values are out of the mainstream of Pennsylvania. Fracking has been a long part of her issues when she was Attorney General, when she was District Attorney. That's who she is. So coming forward and trying to say this flip took place, which she doesn't want to address, she doesn't want to answer, which is actually her position, is just not going to fly between now and November.
Yeah, I think she was very declarative about that. Dana asked her very point blank, and she said, are you for fracking? She said no. She said this was my position in 2020, and the difference is she actually has a record. She has not been advocating that the Biden-Harris administration take up a fracking agenda over the last several years. We have not heard that. We've heard other things that she has pushed, and obviously Ashley knows quite well some of the other initiatives where she has leaned in terms of different issues. But look, I think she was very clear about that, and she was very clear. I think one of the things, the question about values, right, what voters are really asking you is, can I trust you? Can I trust you're going to get up every day and make a good decision and do your best for me and my family? That's really what this is about.
Well, also consistency she was addressing,
correct.
Right?
But I think we would all want to know that we have leaders who, when they get new information, more information, are able to change their opinions. For example, someone like President Biden, I very much respect that he has had the journey of millions of Americans who maybe at one point had different feelings about reproductive freedom and abortion access. And now he understands why every woman has a very different health situation, and we can't just do a one-size-fits-all. Now, the difference being, here's what I think is really important in this. She actually twice in the interview talked very specifically about the value and the goal in terms of, is it about limiting climate emissions? What is the value? What is it we're trying to accomplish? And what did we do in a number of different policy pieces of the policy agenda where investments were made, where you address those issues, where you set time limits? That's very different than someone like former President Trump, who said, hey, I'm real proud of what I did to overturn Roe v. Wade by appointing these judges. But now he says, well, but now I got to get elected, so I'm just not going to talk about it. So if we want to talk about trust and consistency, there's a difference in your values maintaining themselves and you're trying to solve a problem versus you're saying, I just have to get elected.
All right, so is this, one of the overarching questions for any campaign and pushing her to do the interview, you mentioned the idea of, silencing in many ways to critics who said it's been too long, why aren't you speaking? You're talking about checking a box. How about moving a needle? The Wall Street Journal poll found that 84% of respondents said they know enough about Harris. They know enough about her. If that's the case, does the interview itself move the needle, or is this about something more about optics?
Well, these are two different questions of, is it good political strategy to sit for these interviews, or should she sit for these interviews and answer well, I'm not a political strategist. That's much more Karen and Ashley's department. But I can say, as a reporter, I think she definitely should, because she has changed her position on a lot of very big issues. The fact that Medicare for all would be a huge overhaul of the American healthcare system, and she no longer supports that. Why? What are her first priorities as president? And I feel like her answer, just talking to some Democrats right afterward, her answer still doesn't make clear what are her first pieces of legislation when she would be president. That being said, I talked to a bunch of Democrats today. They basically have there was sort of a collective exhale, including from Harris advisors, for Biden advisors, because they know that some of her worst moments as vice president have come when she does not give a confident interview. They weren't exactly thrilled with this performance, or at least parts of it. They thought she did well, but not amazing. And the thing is, there's this whole debate going on among people that have known her for a long time. Is this the new Kamala or the old Kamala? The new Kamala is the one that America has seen, that we've seen the last six weeks, that she's incredibly confident on the stump. She is really just taking control of this race, dominated earned media in a way that actually some people remember her being in California. Then there's the 2019, 2020 Kamala Harris, who at times seemed on her back foot and did not always seem super comfortable. And which one we get could determine the outcome of this election.
Well, one person we got today was a woman who was quite determined not to take the bait when it comes to consistently having to address what the former president has to say about her, whether it's her race or her gender. In fact, do we have that sound to play for everyone to remind them how she actually responded to this? Listen to this.
I want to ask you about your opponent, Donald Trump.
Okay.
I was a little bit surprised. People might be surprised to hear that you have never interacted with him, met him face to face. That's going to change soon. But what I want to ask you about is what he said last month. He suggested that you happened to turn black recently for political purposes, questioning a core part of your identity.
Yeah.
Any
same old tired playbook. Next question, please.
That's it?
That's it.
You know, that's it. She didn't want to address it further. She didn't lean into it further. I do wonder strategically the why. Why?
I think that this campaign has taken a big pivot from the Biden approach, which Biden's approach had been to say Donald Trump is this apocalyptic threat. He is offensive to everything we believe, et cetera. And the Harris approach has been more Donald Trump is, whether it was the weird stuff or this is almost suggesting he's boring. Aren't you all tired of the Trump show? And in a way, Donald Trump's real strength over the years has always been, love him or hate him, he knows how to get eyeballs, right? And so it's leaning into this idea that, like, aren't you just tired of it? Isn't it a little boring? Isn't it a little stale at this stage? So of all the answers she gave, that was one where I can understand and see the sort of strategy there.
Ashley, why?
No, I mean, I think she's trying to paint him as small, as, you know, he is a small character, and I think that's what he's trying to do. I mean, my gut reaction was, well, when did you become orange? I mean, what kind of color foundation is that? With, like, how did that come about, you know? But nevertheless, I think Kristen's right that, you know, the objective is to really let Trump be Trump. That's the strategy. Let him put on full display who he is. He's nasty, he's small, he's petty. That's who you want him to be at every turn. You want him to do these press conferences. You want him to have the mic on during the debate because you want people to be reminded of who he is. And when they see him, the more they see him, the more they're reminded of why they don't like him. I mean, again, the Wall Street Journal, you know, who I don't know any other publication that's been more favorable to Republicans, made the point that the Republican Party's problem is their candidate. It's Donald Trump. And that's what the vice president did there. She put on full display. The problem is him. It's not me. And this is not who we are as Americans. This is inconsistent with who we are. This is beneath what the office of the presidency.
Everyone stand by. We're going to talk more about this interview. Donald Trump reacting actually to the Harris interview, calling it boring on Truth Social tonight and saying that he is not impressed.
And she didn't look like a leader to me, I'll be honest. I don't see her negotiating with President Xi of China. I don't see her with Kim Jong-un like we did with Kim Jong-un.
With me now.
Let me explain. Let me go for in depth with that. You don't need to look like a leader on the outside. What matters most is that you are a leader on the inside. That's all that matters.
Mitch Landrieu, national co-chair of the Harris-Walz campaign. Mitch, good to see you. I mean, Trump also wrote, by the way, that he agrees that her values haven't changed and suggested that her policies will be more in line with the Harris of 2019 than the one of today. I wonder, what's your response to his statements about her interview?
When he looks into the mirror, he sees the king of the world. Unfortunately, nobody else in the world sees that. I think the most striking thing about the interview tonight for me was how normal the vice president and the governor seemed. And what a sense of relief that I think most Americans have had, that you had two people that were obviously smart, they're talented, they're knowledgeable, they answered every question. There wasn't one sense of anger in anything that they did. They tried as best as they could to to respond to the questions that Dana asked, and I thought she conducted an excellent interview. And I think America kind of took a breath and thought, oh my God, this is what a new pathway to the future looks like, because America is not going to forget that this is a choice. It's a choice between Donald Trump, who, when basically his lips are moving, he's lying. He's a 34-time convicted felon. He's been determined to be a sexual abuser. He has been found liable for business fraud. He has gone bankrupt 6 times, and he can't seem to keep his mouth shut any part of any day. Now, that's who we're running against and his values. And by the way, he hasn't changed one lick from the minute that he came down that elevator, so we know what we're getting. And a guy who continues to put himself first, continues to engage in grievance. That's who she's running against. So if you look at that interview that the vice president did in that context, you have to kind of just say, thank God we're finally going to have a leader of this country that thinks about the regular people in a way that we think about ourselves.
It was quite the split screen, and one of the first things she said that she'd focus on were middle-class voters, to your point. I do wonder, though, will we see her do another one-on-one interview or a one-on-one, not having Walz present, or a town hall where she takes questions from voters exclusively?
Well, first of all, this myth that she hasn't done interviews is just a myth. She's actually done 80 interviews this year. The second myth is that she should have done this by herself.
I want you to finish. I want you to finish. I just want to be clear in my question. I mean, since becoming the head of the ticket.
Thank you for clarifying your question. But people have indicated that she hasn't done interviews. That's not true. She has faced the media for the last 4 years, and she's done 80 this year. And then she did one as a candidate. Other presidential candidates, their first interview, all of them have been with their vice presidential candidates. The third thing that I would like to point out to you is she's great at this. So my expectation is she's going to do plenty more, and there's no reason why she won't. I think that what the American people saw today was a very competent, smart person who has learned the hard work of governing well. And I think she's going to continue to demonstrate that. And that's why I think America is going to be for a new pathway forward that she's talking about.
I'm curious as to your take on what some are called and have called flip-flopping in the past, she addressing as a consistent messaging and her values unchanged. How do you think that she plans to go forward, talking about distinguishing herself from the Biden-Harris administration and trying to create a sense of a Harris-Walz administration where there is some distance, even if there is consistency, but her evolution as a vice president added in?
Well, let me try to address that in 3 points. First of all, it's a good thing for an elected official over time when they learn more and they're actually governing in order to get things done, find compromises that make sense. It is true that the Biden-Harris administration has had the largest investment in creating a clean energy economy, but we have to do it in a way that is not more hurtful than has to be given the time that we have. And so it's not really dishonorable to say, listen, I've changed because I've learned more. That's actually a good thing. I want to juxtapose that to, for example, Donald Trump jettisoning the border bill because he thought that it was good for political gain, or how well President Biden brought together a very narrow House and the Senate to pass the 4 pieces of legislation that we've seen in the last 30 years. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Secondly, there should be no doubt that as the vice president, she basically has to take the position of the president. And Tim Walz will do that with her when they're fighting behind closed doors. But to be clear, in case anybody is not clear by now, Kamala Harris is her own person, and she will develop her own positions going forward that you should just expect will not always be the same as what President Biden might have done.
Well, let me ask you about the debate. ABC says the mics are going to be muted on September 10th while the opponent speaks. You laugh. I do wonder why. Will these rules not apply?
I don't know. You know what I'm so tickled by is that Trump's own people are trying to shut him up. That's the thing that tickles me the most. He's even, tweeting out and his campaigner saying, no, he didn't really mean that. He didn't mean that about IVF. He didn't mean that about the abortion ban. He didn't mean that about his position. So evidently, they're having trouble inside of Trump world just kind of lassoing this guy and keeping him where he needs to be. So, I don't know. If you turn the mics off, he's going to yell. If you leave the mics on, he's going to yell. So he's going to be what he's going to be because he has not changed. He is the same rotten person that he's been since he stepped on the national stage, and he's going to continue to do that. And why in the world America would want to put a bat in the hands of somebody that's going to use it against him is beyond me. And I don't think the American people are going to do that.
Will Harris debate mute or not?
They're trying to work out the details. From my perspective, it doesn't matter one way or the other. She's going to show up. You don't have to worry about that. She has, as she said, as a district attorney, as the attorney general, face down people like Donald Trump who have done the same egregious things that he's done, and she will be there ready to go. And, you know, it's time to put the microphone debate to rest, and let's just get ready to rumble.
Mitch Landrieu, thank you so much.
Good to be with you.
Another big interview coming up tomorrow. Make sure to tune in for Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, right here on CNN at 8:15 a.m. Much more on tonight's exclusive CNN interview. Ahead, Harris says she'd appoint a Republican to her cabinet. The question is, who?
No one in particular in mind. We got 68 days to go with this election, so I'm not putting the cart before the horse.
But would it help if she had some names in mind? My panel weighs in next. And ahead, a top Trump ally is here to react to the big interview. Stay with us.
TV on the Edge premieres Sunday, September 22nd at 9 on CNN.
I'm on here telling
he's going to yell. So he's going to be
J.D. Vance right here on CNN at 8:15 a.m.
I missed that, so no chance of, you know, live streaming that.
/TV.
What a good hit. And it's going to hurt.
Rough and tough monsters of the Midway.
This is your team.
Unequivocally, we have the right set of individuals. That's what we do.
They're going to take us to the next level.
1, 2, 3,
Hard Knocks training camp with the Chicago Bears. Streaming exclusively on Max.
You had a lot of Republican speakers at the convention. Will you appoint a Republican to your cabinet?
Yes, I would.
Anyone in mind?
Yes, I would. No one in particular in mind. We got 68 days to go with this election, so I'm not putting the cart before the horse. But I would. I think it's really important. I have spent my career inviting diversity of opinion. I think it's important to have people at the table when some of the most important decisions are being made that have different views, different experiences. And I think it would be to the benefit of the American public to have a member of my cabinet who was a Republican.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris in tonight's CNN exclusive interview. Let's bring back in my panel. Kristen, does the American electorate have an appetite for the diversity of opinions to show in the cabinet post? Would this move the needle for voters?
I'm sure if I asked people in a poll, how much do you care about ideological diversity in the cabinet, it would poll much lower than, are you going to do something to bring down the cost of living, et cetera? But I do think, you know, earlier in the show, you showed a poll number that there was about 1 out of 6 voters that say they still don't know enough about Harris. But that's kind of the profile of the very sort of voter, a swing voter who still doesn't know that much about her. They're still trying to figure out, is she San Francisco left progressive, or is she actually this new centrist she says she is? Statements like that, even if they don't have much meat on the bone, she doesn't have a name, she doesn't have a position, she just says, I'm open to a Republican, is trying to be a signal to that kind of a voter.
I agree with
sure,
you
I promise there's room for someone like you at my table.
But I would add, you ultimately still have to look at her record. I mean, she was Attorney General of California. Immigration was a huge issue in California. She never reached out to any of the Republicans there to help with the issue. She was the border person. I won't use the borders, or everybody gets defensive, but she was the border person.
She was the role that she played as Attorney General, where
I was in California. I know the policy really well.
Yeah, and she actually led a delegation of attorneys general from around the country to meet with the Attorney General of Mexico to try to address issues of human trafficking, transnational crime, gangs,
but that delegation did not have Republicans, if memory serves me correctly.
If memory serves me, I believe it did.
No, I would double check that, because, you know, even let's move forward to when she was in the Biden administration. She had this border position. I say czar. Everybody wants to argue with me, fine. But how many Republicans did she reach out to during that time? 0. So I think we know where she stands. She's just throwing it out there because it's smart politics.
But the reality is, like, you know, I think as the mayor was talking about the big pieces of legislation that this administration has passed in a bipartisan way, everything from infrastructure to guns, you think she had no part in that? Of course she's making phone calls and reaching out to Republicans. So to suggest that she's not reached across the aisle to pass big pieces of legislation to build consensus is not true or factual.
Listen, I've watched every single ad that the Trump campaign is running right now, and it's one consistent theme is dangerously liberal. And the whole reason why she's committing to put a Republican in the cabinet is to try to confront that and say, no, I'm not that liberal and I'm not that dangerous.
Well, how do progressives see this?
think progressives see this as it would depend on who the person is and what the role would be. But look, at the end of the day, she's the president. I think progressives trust her. Again, it comes down to, do you trust this person to make good decisions? And I think when you look at her record, I go back to what she herself said in her speech last week, for the people. She has talked about a record where consistently that is what has guided her decisions. What she didn't say as directly as I'll say right now, the contrast is that is never what Donald Trump has ever made his life in, it's not really public service about. It's always been about him. And I think that's the main contrast point.
Well, to Karen's point, it's actually really remarkable how little grumbling there are from progressives who love to whine, by the way.
Correct.
And, and she has abandoned many left-wing positions, and people are just like, nope, we're all on board. Let's beat Trump.
Okay, but who is the Republican? What would be the cabinet post? Any ideas of who would be the least problematic, that would give permission structure to maybe independents or persuadable Republicans who are looking for a reason to jump ship?
But, that's a hard question to answer also because not many Republicans are likely to come forward now until after, let's say, she wins. And then you might see more people saying, okay, yeah, I'd be open to doing it. So it's not just, it's putting it out there as half of it. The other half of it is who would be interested in doing it.
Well, she's got a lot of good options. I mean, there's a lot of
take Adam Kinzinger, take him.
Former any day and twice on Sunday. Bless him and thank him for his service to this country.
Well, let's talk about
Secretary of the Air Force for Kinzinger. I think he serves in the Air National Guard. That could be a good place for him.
Well, there you go. You've already decided what's going to happen. Yeah. Let's see what she says about that. Let's talk about the issue of reproductive rights, because this is going to be a very important issue. It continues to be since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. There was this moment that was when Walz was asked about the question about, and he was pressed about saying that he and his wife had IVF when they actually underwent IUI, a similar but different procedure for a variety of reasons. It doesn't have the same description, but is this something that the voters are really looking at, the nuance and the detail there? And did he effectively address this point?
I don't know that they're looking at the nuance and the detail of somebody's very personal medical history. I have been very public about being glad that he's sort of talked about his story. I wish it had had a little more precision to it if he is going to get into the details, but nevertheless, it is really tough politics for Republicans right now when Democrats are trying to frame them as being anti-IVF. That's why Donald Trump has frankly come out today. He's making waves and kind of ruffling some feathers on the right by saying, not only do I support IVF, I believe IVF should be covered by health insurance. It'll be interesting to see to what extent, in the same way that progressives have kind of given a very long leash to Kamala Harris to pivot to the center, to what extent does the pro-life movement give Donald Trump a really long leash to try to pivot to the center on this issue?
I mean, I've already gotten angry text messages from the pro-life movement saying, what the hell is going on? So,
over the IVF?
Oh, absolutely. Trump's saying that insurance policies are going to be mandated or that the government's going to pay for it. Like, that is a huge issue to the pro-life movement, and there are people that are upset. But, at the end of the day, this is what leaders do. They sort of pick a position where the party has to follow them. Trump has picked a position of IVF, and the party's going to follow them, whether they like it or not. Trump's the president, and he's going to make the decisions, just like if Kamala were to be president, she'd make the decisions, and progressives would have to follow. That's just the nature of politics.
Here's the thing. The American people should not be fooled by this attempt by Donald Trump to rebrand himself as somehow pro-reproductive rights for women. I mean, that's incredibly laughable. The fact that the Senate, Republicans in the Senate tried to pass a bill to outlaw and to ban IVF, I mean, speaks volumes about who they are as a party. So
yeah, but Trump's the leader of the party. When he says that, that's going to have a powerful
But Trump
impact.
has also said he's got to get elected.
And bragged
so he's
about
pretty much willing to take any
reversing
position.
Roe. I mean, the reality is like those are inconsistent positions. So my only caution to the American people, and I don't think anyone's going to buy this, is to don't believe this hype.
Well, everyone stand by. We have more about this important point. That's a cliffhanger. You had your finger up, whatever. More on the interview ahead in just a moment. I have Trump ally Congressman Mike Walz. He is here to respond to some of what Harris said. Plus, is Donald Trump going to oppose or support Florida's 6-week abortion ban this November? The statement he made tonight on this very topic, only to have his campaign try and walk it back, is next.
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
Monday night, a 2-hour whole story special, the candidates and their record on the key issues of the election season. What does their past tell us about how they will lead? The whole story with Anderson Cooper, Monday starting at 8 on CNN.
Why did we choose safe flight?
Let's see that again real quick.
Campaign try
mark
and
that
walk
on our
it back
calendars.
Is next.
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
Monday night, a 2-hour whole story special, the candidates and their record on the key issues of the election season. What does their past tell us about how they will lead? The whole story with Anderson Cooper, Monday.
Hang on, folks. I'm gonna set the recorder real quick since it's today. I just hope I'm not too late for that. That's today. Or maybe I am too late. And hang on. Not throwing in the towel just yet. Okay, hang on. I'm gonna continue. I hope you got this memorized.
Starting at 8 on CNN.
Why did we choose LitterRobot.com.
If you know luxury, it's not just award-winning, it's rewarding. Sattva Mattresses supports all types of sleepers with durable steel coils and plush organic cotton. Luxury is handcrafted in American factories and brought directly to you with our free in-home white glove delivery service, which is why over 90% of customers would recommend Sattva to friends and family. Sattva, luxury mattresses made affordable.
I'm Priscilla Alvarez, traveling with the Harris-Walz campaign in Georgia. This is CNN.
Donald Trump has bragged about being the president that ended Roe v. Wade, making it a major campaign selling point with his base, which is why a lot of people were surprised when the former president said this today about an amendment on the ballot this November that could overturn Florida's 6-week abortion ban.
In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks.
Well, Trump's campaign is trying to clarify his position, saying, quote, President Trump has not yet said how he will vote on the ballot initiative in Florida. He simply reiterated that he believes 6 weeks is too short. With me now, Florida Republican Congressman and Trump supporter Mike Walz. Congressman, good evening to you. I'm going to ask you about Vice President Harris' interview in just a moment, but I do want to start with what Trump said earlier today on the Florida abortion amendment. What do you make of this statement? Do you believe that he is committing to his position on abortion, or is he giving some room for change?
Well, it doesn't surprise me when we want to get to Kamala in a minute, but you want to go to this first. So look, President Trump's been clear, and J.D. Vance said definitively that he would veto any type of national abortion law. And what was so important about Roe versus Wade was that it took it out of the courts basically legislating on the issue, and it sent it back to the states which have legislated on it. And importantly, it put it in the hands of voters. And voters are going to vote and continue to vote across the country. And really what's at stake here is that each individual is deciding a very difficult debate. When does life begin? And that's the crux of the debate. And therefore, when does that child deserve the protections of the law? Research has shown that children can feel pain now at 15 weeks. That's very different than the 70s. And many people believe that it's either at conception or at the heartbeat. And so voters are going to vote, including in Florida.
You described the breadth of the arguments in favor and against, but if he does want more than 6 weeks, Congressman, then he'd have to vote in support of the amendment. So why not just say that?
Well, I'll let President Trump, if he wants to talk about how he's specifically going to vote on one issue, then he can vote that way. I can tell you, me personally, I'm going to vote against it. The language is so vague that it could essentially allow a doctor to make a decision right up to the moment of birth. And so are people going to get behind? And I would love to see you ask Democrats, when is it not okay to get an abortion? The day before, the week before, the month before, late term, is that okay? I think the vast majority of voters don't think that's okay, and we'll work that out at the ballot box.
Voters will have to take account of all those positions. Congressman, let me move on to another point. You've been critical of Biden and also Harris's handling of the crisis at the border. And in her interview with Dana Bash, Harris blamed Trump for torpedoing the bipartisan border bill that the White House tried to pass earlier this year. Listen.
Donald Trump got word of this bill that would have contributed to securing our border, and because he believes that it would not have helped him politically, he told his folks in Congress, don't put it forward. He killed the bill. A border security bill that would have put 1,500 more agents on the border.
What's your reaction to her statement? And do you believe that Trump's actions undermining this bill undermine his ability to attack her on the border issue?
That bill would have not secured the border. In fact, the crux of it, which you've heard Kamala Harris say over and over again, pour more money into judges, pour more money into processing facilities, pour more money into beds. Basically, they just want to process illegal immigrants into our interior faster. It would attract more migration into the United States when we know what policies worked, and the policies that worked under President Trump are the ones that Biden reversed on day one: remain in Mexico, limiting parole, and having the Mexicans secure their southern border rather than just passing people through. But what was so laughable about the interview was that she tried to address and take credit for addressing the core migration, or the core issues driving migration, when the actual core issue driving migration out of the largest countries that people are fleeing are price controls, are socialist-style price controls out of Nicaragua and out of Venezuela, the very economic measure that she doubled down in this interview and said she would do to the United States. I mean, it's laughable if it weren't so serious.
Well, Congressman, what I heard her saying was that her role as addressing the root causes of migration was part of her portfolio. And then she also talked about her time as a California Attorney General and how that positioned her to be able to address some of the issues at the border. In fact, let me play for you what she had to say on the point that you're raising.
Just a second, people. All right. Before I continue, I just want to tell him, have people forgotten that immigration is what makes America great? Truly great. Not that false great stuff that Trump just spews out of his mouth. Anyway, let's continue.
I'm the only person who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations who traffic in guns, drugs, and human beings. I'm the only person in this race who actually served a border state as Attorney General to enforce our laws, and I would enforce our laws as president going forward.
Does that give you any pause about your earlier statements regarding her ability to address these issues going forward as
But you cut
president?
out. But you cut out the part of the question where is someone who crosses our border illegally a criminal? Did they commit a crime? And she completely dodged that question. And the other part of it is
actually,
what she
she
did
said,
do as vice
Congressman, there'd
president.
be consequences.
Actually, excuse me, let me finish. I'm speaking. So she,
I'll let you finish
the other
for now.
part of it, in terms of the core issues, they poured $4 billion into Central and South America, and every expert will tell you that a huge portion of that is skimmed right off the top by corrupt governments, is skimmed right off the top by cartels and gangs, and actually pouring that much money into the situation actually worsens the problem. She has not fixed the core issues, and in fact is doubling down on price controls.
The core issue of if you want to know, the core issue of immigration lies, basically it's our fault. Our meddling in the Middle East, and no, not Middle East. Sorry. Our meddling in Central and Southern America during the Cold War. That's what's driving immigration. Immigration, if you want to know that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that might be fact. We have to learn what we always. Every action has a reaction. Yeah, we always have to learn. We always have to find out what, if we do this, what will be the long-term consequences. You always gotta think long-term, not short-term. Always get to the root of the problem and solve it in the long run. Not just do it at the surface.
Oh, I wanted to make sure you were done speaking. I'll talk now. The point that, and part of it, Congressman, you do realize that she did address and say that she believed that there should be consequences for someone to cross the border illegally, and mentioned the idea of what those consequences could possibly be. I certainly know and she said she recognized the problem. Perhaps the next statement after that could be more comprehensive about how precisely she would as the president. Well, that's hence the reason I just...
arrest.
Congressman, we're going to have to be reciprocal in our respect on this program, right? Congressman, can we be reciprocal in our respect that I've conveyed to you? I'm going to finish the point because actually I was giving you additional and buttressing the statement you just made when I said perhaps she could have gone beyond the statement and recognized the problem and talk about what she would do as a president of the United States. But certainly her responses, as you have identified them, did not seem to just condone the behavior. Do you not agree?
Well, but again, this is on the premise that this is day one of Kamala Harris. And what that interview, and I haven't seen, because she hasn't sat down for any others, much less an actual live press conference, is taking responsibility for the last 3.5 years. With 15 to 20 million migrants. And every time I talk to a homeless veteran who isn't getting the services that they deserved, I talk to a school that's overcrowded, infrastructure that's being taxed, and yet you're allowing that many people to pour into our inner cities and into our communities. She needs to take responsibility for that and not pretend like day one is coming and then these ill-defined consequences. She dodged the question.
Well, we'll see what the American voters believe and whether the ill-defined substantive answers are provided by both campaigns. That's what the American people are hoping to hear in the next 68 days. Congressman Mike Walz, thank you for joining me.
All right, thanks a lot.
Well, you know, Harris could be the first woman president, but is that what she's focused on?
Personally, I don't think I'd be focused on that. I'd just be more focusing on trying to spread the message like Trump. I am so sorry. I meant Bernie. Sometimes the wrong words come out of my mouth. High function autism, darn it. Curse my high function autism. Anyway, getting close to the end, so let's finish this up. I bet this is the last commercial break.
Life ready, wallet happy. That's 365 by Whole Foods Market.
Magellan, Amelia Earhart, the Impractical Jokers.
Let's go, Nom Nom!
Some travelers belong in the history books. Impractical Jokers, all new Thursdays at 10 on TBS. Set your DVR now.
At this point, you've probably seen the viral photo of Kamala Harris on the DNC stage with her niece in the foreground. Many commenting it looks like a young Harris watching herself become the Democratic nominee for president. Well, Dana Bash asked Harris to reflect on that moment and her identity. Listen.
You know, I am running because I believe that I am the best person to do this job at this moment for all Americans, regardless of race and gender. But I did see that photograph, and I was deeply touched by it. And you're right, it's the back of her head, her two little braids, and then I'm in the front of the photograph, obviously speaking. And it's very humbling. It's very humbling in many ways.
My panel is back with me. Ashley, a lot of people at the DNC and a lot of people talking about her candidacy are talking about the historic nature of her candidacy. She's not leaning in fully or addressing it top of mind. Why not?
I think her presence says it all, and I don't think she has to say it. I worked on Obama's campaign. He didn't say it, and that was sort of a whisper about the campaign, like, let's not talk about it, let's not focus on it. So I don't think she has to. I think her presence says it all. But I do agree with her. I think that photo was insanely moving, insanely touching. And I think what they did, the job that was hats off to Mignon Moore and others that ran the convention. It was such an affirmation. It was so affirming for women, but especially for Black women. The notion that Fannie Lou Hamer came to the convention 60 years ago to the day that Kamala Harris accepted the nomination, arguing to be seated. And now, 60 years later, you have a Black woman that's accepting. So the fact that, the convention focused on the effort of Black women to make the party realize and the country realize and live up to its ideals was very powerful. But I don't think she needs to say what's already said.
I would say it was a smart answer to get back to that. I think it's important for when President Obama ran, he sort of ran as this post-partisan person, sort of this the country's moving beyond post-partisan too. Red America, Blue America, or United States of America, that's post-partisan, right? And so to have that approach, it's smart, especially as she's still undefined in many ways. It's a positive image. The photo was exceptional. I mean, listen, I'm a dad of a young girl. You look at that photo, the first thing a dad says is like, a mom clearly did that braid, because there's no way a dad could even come close to any of those things. But it is a powerful image as a dad. I looked at my daughter in that photo itself, and she answered it right. But you're still going to have to get back to the policies that just affect these families, and I think that's where that's where she's going to have the issue this November.
To add to that, Obama may have run as post-racial, but Obama never thought the country was in a post-racial spot. But it's not a coincidence that her answer came after a bunch of Obama alumni just joined the campaign, and they thought Hillary Clinton had made a mistake by doing the "I'm with her" messaging and sort of making that part of her campaign.
Yeah, look, I think she understands that what this election is about is how are you going to be a president for everybody? And that means something different for each of us. For people who you see yourself as a father looking at that image. I see a cute little girl with braids, right? Everybody's going to see something different. And I think she's trying to keep it focused on that rather than and again, at the same time, what's powerful about her is she absolutely feels the importance of that moment. She said she felt humbled by the moment.
Look, women are a majority of voters in this country, but you've got to win over an awful lot of men in order to win, too. And I think by downplaying gender and staying focused on policy, that is going to be a smarter approach for her if she wants to win in November.
It also tells me just how important race and gender remain in this country, that one has to be strategic about when you introduce it. Thank you so much, everyone here, and thank you all for watching. The full CNN exclusive interview with Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, is right after this.
The redo.
The pros for Have I Got News for You are pretty obvious.
Yeah. The redo. That's what they said. So, what'd you think? Pretty great, huh? You learned a lot. You learned a lot. Did you learn a lot? If you're working on the Harris Walz campaign, you better inform them about this information immediately. That way they'll be better suited to help. Better suited to helping the country. With the ads there. To become a people's president, you gotta connect with the people, demonstrate compassion and empathy, lead with integrity and transparency, advocate for the common good, build trust and credibility, empower and include the citizenry, remain accessible and responsive, promote unity and collaboration, lead by example, and stay committed to continuous improvement. And no matter what happens, you gotta stay on that course, and not let anything or anyone divert you away from it. I think that's 31 seconds or 21. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. Now I gotta wait. Still, who wants Trump to take this test?
Or call 1-877-866-8555.
Meet Jack, an ordinary guy with an extraordinary pair of pants. Introducing the Jet Setter Tech Pants by Jack Archer. Crafted for comfort, stain and water resistant. The Jet Setter Tech Pants by Jack Archer. Get yours today at jackarcher.com/TV.
I'm Rahel Solomon in New York, and this is CNN.
Closed captioning is brought to you by Skechers Hands-Free Slip-Ins.
This tiny home trend. Now this is more like it. The same goes for my footwear. So I went hands-free with wide fit Skechers slip-ins. Try wide fit Skechers slip-in.
That's it. Well, that's it, folks. I hope to see you tomorrow at the debate. I know one thing. I gotta clean myself up before I even show my face at the debate. I'm not gonna attend in person, but you get the idea. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. Thanks for watching this live stream. Now don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and if you can, share this live stream with as many people as you can. Friends, family, complete strangers. The possibilities are endless, so they could share them with their friends, families, complete strangers. The possibilities are endless. Help me to help this account stay on the 1,000 subscribers. Or I can risk losing this channel too. Until I get a YouTube lawyer to fix the issue that they did. But until the debate tomorrow, this is Jeffrey Bartol signing off.